living on a disk, floating through space, with a tiny sun.
Hey, I'm FTFE, welcome back to the channel that does to stupidity what the current price of petrol is doing to my wallet. Thank you for joining me for what hopefully won't be too painful a discussion, but, you know, we'll see. So, tonight, we have Rachie 50 coming back. Now, there's been a lot of effort in the community spent on what I'm going to say is trying to help Rachie. There's also been a lot of mockery against Rachie, some rightfully so. And I want to try and use tonight to go over the things that I think she is very, very close to understanding and breaking through to sanity. Because as evidenced in the video by Simon Dan recently that featured Rachie, she isn't Sleeping Warrior levels of dumb. She actually has the ability to, and I feel bad saying this with some of the things that's happened, but she has the ability to logically think and, you know, actually look at the information and take in what's going on, which makes me very confused as to a lot of the things that has happened. But there's been a lot of effort put in from a lot of people in the community. Some people are very unhappy with the way that the help has been received. But I hope today we can try and push forward a little bit and see if we can break the brainwashing that I think Rachie has undergone. Now, I'm going to stop talking about her as though she's not here, because she is here. Rachie, hello. Thank you for coming. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you coming on. I know we've had some rather hostile encounters, but I'll try and behave today, and hopefully you can do the same.
Yeah, sounds good.
Are you going to stay off camera today? Is that cool? Or
whatever you want.
Well, it's up to you. It's up ready if you want to come on camera. First thing I want to talk about, Rachie, is your new video.
Yeah.
I genuinely thought you put that up as satire.
No.
And this is what really confuses me about you, because as we saw with the Slime Man Down video, you can literally take an exam and pass with a relatively good grade. Yet somehow you lack the ability to think in 3 dimensions, as evidenced by your new video. Have you rethought your position on that video at all?
Yeah, I have. Because I've remodeled it and put it slightly back from the, you know, the starting line of where the daytime would come up, kind of thing. And with the angle position change, it would... Technically, the parallel ray doesn't change and change angle. It's just the fact that you've changed angle on the surface. So.
Yeah, right. So if people don't know what we're talking about, Wolfie did a video where from inside his cockpit, he could see the sun and it was below what was his horizontal. And he put his finger up, and on the left of the cockpit, you can see a shadow rising above the position of the sun. And then Rachie did this to try and debunk it, saying that if he was at the side of the Earth, then the light would have been parallel and not gone above him like it did. And I wanted Rachie to realise where she'd gone wrong, and it does seem that she has. So the whole thing about this is that there would be no explanation for this on the flat Earth. Do you agree with that statement, Rachie?
No, but I can't see your screen. Are you sharing it with Zoom?
Oh, it should be coming through on Zoom. Hold on. Yeah, you should be able to see my screen. I'm sharing my video.
I've just got a black screen.
It shows that it's sharing. I can see that it's sharing on my side.
Strange.
Well, I'm just showing your video at the moment, basically.
Oh,
So-
okay.
Right, so how do you think the sun could have been below the horizontal? You know, literally below the plane. That's the only way it could have happened, is if the sun was below the plane. How do you think that could happen if the Earth is flat?
It's not below the plane.
Well, it has to be, because the sun
to explain
is
it.
casting a shadow upwards.
Yeah, but it's not. The sun is not below the plane.
Then how is the light going upwards and casting a shadow on the top of the cockpit? You know, it doesn't make sense.
Okay, are you ready for a thought experiment?
Go ahead. I imagine this could be painful.
Okay, so imagine a flashlight, but it's really, really powerful. Now, just imagine it like on top of a plane, so it's the sun above the plane kind of thing. So it's at its GP, so to speak. So it's at its zenith. So if this flashlight is above the plane and you're pointing it at the plane, so it's, you know, straight down looking at the plane, the light rays are coming down. As you move the flashlight further away, but keep it focused on that spot on the top of the plane kind of thing, as you move it further and further away, it will appear to get lower and lower and lower until eventually it meets the horizon, and it'll still like appear to get lower and disappear into the horizon, and that's what it casts.
Whether it would appear to sink down, which is what perspective shows us it would do in our line of sight. You know, like railway tracks going into the distance. You know, it appears to go down, but it doesn't actually go down. So the light rays coming from it would still technically be above the plane in your example.
No, because I'm not talking about perspective, how it appears to lower. Like I said, imagine the light rays coming out the torch. Now imagine as you moved away with that torch, you kept shining it on that spot, but this torch was like powerful enough to keep seeing from a distance kind of thing. And you kept shining it on that exact same spot. As you move the torch away, you'd have to like angle the torch. And as you angle the torch, it ends up basically, you know, having an angle going upwards as it sinks into the horizon, or, you know, appears to sink into the horizon.
But yeah, but like you said, it appears to. It doesn't actually. In your
The angle of the light actually does change.
But the angle of the light would never go below the plane.
But it does, because it gets that far away. It does appear like that.
Appear, but not actually. It would have to, you know, like in perspective, when you're looking at train tracks in the distance, those train tracks would never go above the horizontal. And in the same way, a sun on a flat Earth going away and appearing to shrink into the distance would never go below the horizontal and cast light upwards. That, you know.
But you've got to remember, Wolf is up in the air. There's actually a perfect picture of this that Conspiracy Cats did, and it was actually for the video for me.
God,
and it's
Rachie,
two
come
people
on.
on a bridge. It's two people on a bridge, and as the light moves away, it shows it's basically the same level. But as the pole moves away, the light, whatever it was I used. But then he drops the boy down as he's sinking into the ground, and basically like into the horizon, and that's when you get that angle upwards. He even shows the angle upwards.
Yeah, but there isn't an actual angle upwards, Rachie. There's never going to be an angle upwards in if the sun is physically above it. I mean, come on. Right, let me. I have to break out the paint to show this, right? So, let's say we've got. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I wanted a circle. Right, got the sun here. Okay, and then we've got the plane over here, right? And so this is what you're proposed. Can you see on the screen? Can you see it? I did share.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Right. So no matter how far away the plane gets from this, the sun rays are always going to be like that, okay? Always going to be above. There will be no point where the sun would apparently be below. So even if this is all the way over here, the sun is still always above. There is still always an upwards angle to the sun. Right? This, it's never going to cast a shadow upwards. What you got in Wolfie's cockpit was a shadow over here when the sun would, on the flat Earth, be up here. But this works on a globe Earth, like, so easily. But it won't work like this. Let me show you what it would be like on the globe Earth. Okay? The globe Earth is very, very simple. So here's the Earth. And we've got Wolfie's plane over here. And then you've got the sun. Oops, wrong one. The sun really, really big, all the way over here. So the sun rays from the sun are always coming parallel, right? And the reason why it would appear on Wolfie's plane that the sun rays were going upwards is because if the plane is further around, the sun to him is going to be, let's move the plane up a bit so it makes a bit more sense. So let's say the plane's, sorry. Right. So the plane's up a bit in the sky, and the sun rays are coming completely parallel, like this. And if Wolfie's plane is perpendicular to the surface, and this would have to be, imagine this, I should probably be able to turn this around, but this would be perpendicular to the surface, so Wolfie would be facing perpendicular to the surface as well. So, the plane is flying. I'll tell you what, I'm going to get rid of some of the stuff I've done here because I've made a complete mess.
It's okay, I know what you mean. I've done it myself, so I understand.
Right. Okay, so Wolfie's plane here, and you've got that, and then the sun is over here, and you've got the rays that are coming in parallel. So to Wolfie in the plane up here, it's going to appear that the sun is coming below him, and for him in the plane it will be able to cast a shadow upwards because he's perpendicular to the surface. And this is the only way it makes sense to have a shadow cast upwards in the cockpit, because on the flat Earth, no matter how far away you get, the sun rays will always be, above the plane and never actually below it. Even if the sun appears to set, the sun would physically be higher than the plane at all times. Unless the sun, of course, is below, the 42,000 feet average cruising altitude of the plane. So, do you see how what happened in Wolfie's plane cockpit could only be possible on the globe?
No, it can happen on a flat Earth too, as I described, with the thought experiment of the torch, and then you move it away, and as you angle it on that same spot, it's going to.
But again, the angle will
get
always
lower and
be
lower
up.
and lower.
All right. Let's. Okay, so flat Earth. Okay. Sun. Plane. Okay, so the sun is above the plane. So what you're saying is, if the plane was further away, this sun is now, the rays from it are now going to be coming upwards. But at what point is the angle, the actual angle to the sun, going to be going the other way? There's no matter how far away it goes, it would never physically drop below the height of the plane. Do you agree with that? It would never physically drop below the height of the plane. Only perspective would make it appear to drop below the height of the plane. All right? Only perspective would make it appear. Okay? So if it's only appearing to drop below the height of the plane, it could never physically be below the height of the plane, casting rays upwards. No matter how far away it got.
Casting the rays upwards. You got to remember, Wolf is in a plane as well. He's not on the ground, so he can already see further than
exactly. But for the rays of light to be cast upwards, the sun would physically. I
know what you're saying. The sun would have to be below to cast the angle upwards. I understand your point of view, but you're not understanding mine.
I am understanding your point of view. You're saying that if the sun goes far enough away, it's going to be able to do this. It's going to be able to cast a ray that way. But it's never going to be far enough away to drop below the horizontal, which in this case would be this. No matter how far away the sun gets, it would never appear to shrink below this line. This angle here.
But it would, that's the thing, as it gets further and further away, it appears to go into the horizon.
Appears to go into the horizon, but never
and
below.
Because Wolf is higher, his horizon is further, so you've got even longer distance to get a different angle where it goes up.
Yeah, but physically, it could never drop below the middle line here.
But it doesn't have to drop physically, that's the point.
It does, because no matter how far away it got, and how close to this line it got, even if it appeared to be right here, the angle is still going to be going upwards, right? This angle is still going to be up and not down. It's never going... No matter how far away this gets... Yeah, but no matter how far away it gets, this angle here is never going to be going downwards. It's always going to be above this horizontal. Please, Rachie, come on. You have to be able to see that. There is no point, no matter how far away it got, no matter what happened with the sun, no matter how far away it got, it would never, ever, ever drop below that middle line. Meaning that the rays of light could never be cast upwards, making a shadow appear above the horizontal in Wolfie's cockpit. It physically couldn't happen if the sun is above a flat earth and the plane is below the sun. It's physically impossible, unless you're suggesting the light actually changes direction.
Essentially, yes.
Why would it change direction, Rachie? Come on. Think logically here.
You got to imagine, remember, you're thinking in terms of your model where you've got parallel light.
No. This is not my model. This is simple. This is simple, geometry. This is simple shapes. The fact is that the sun here will never, ever, ever go below this line, no matter how far away it is. Even if it appears to completely shrink into it, it's never going to be actually below it, right? Even if it's right here, the angle is still going to be a positive one to there. It's never, ever, ever going to be below it, casting the rays of light upwards. And let's say this is Wolfie here, right, in the cockpit, right? The rays of light would have to be coming from below it to cast a shadow up above him. The only way that could ever happen if the Earth was flat was if the sun was physically below the plane.
You're also not taking into consideration the angle of attack as well.
What is the angle of attack, Rachie?
Between 2 and 4 degrees normally.
Are you talking about the plane's angle of attack?
Cruising, yeah. Angle of attack for the plane, yeah.
That's why they have references in the plane as to what is horizontal and level.
Yeah, but they don't fly horizontal and level. They fly...
No, but that's why they have references as to what is horizontal and level within the cockpit, which is what Wolfie showed in his video. He showed where the visors clip on, which you have the co-pilot and the pilot's visors would be at the same level, and you've got the heads-up display, which is level. So no matter the angle of attack, those instruments will be able to tell you what horizontal is. And there will be no point, even if the plane is flipped, completely with the bum of it facing the sun. It would never have a sun ray casting a shadow upwards if the sun is above it. It just physically couldn't happen. And you have to see how what you're saying is completely illogical, because the only way that you could get this shadow going upwards on a flat Earth over here is if the sun is below what would be classed as the plane's horizontal. It just couldn't happen. It only works on a globe model.
Because it's getting further and further away.
No matter how far away it gets, no matter look, this one right here is imagining that this angle is still going to be positive. It's never going to be down here. Ever. It's never, ever, ever going to drop below this horizontal, meaning the sun's rays will never be cast up in Wolfie's cockpit.
Then you got the smushing, how it smushes. Then you got the angle of attack that you got to take into consideration. Smush, it's not what Lemon Bird calls it, the smushing.
Yeah, here's a tip in life in general. Don't listen to Lemon Bird. It's bad for your health.
Yeah, but he's right.
That is never words that could follow Lemon Bird. You could never ever have the words "he is right" following Lemon Bird. That it's actually illegal in the English language. It's just something that's not allowed. You could get in trouble if you ever do that again. If you ever put the words "he is right" next to Lemon Bird, there could be issues. Because nothing he's ever said was ever right. No matter any smushing, no matter amount angle of attack, no amount of magic perspective, there is going to be no way you could ever get the sun casting a shadow upwards in Wolfie's cockpit if the sun is above the plane. Just couldn't happen. Physically impossible.
You can, because there's a smushing, like the angular resolution and everything. You can.
Still won't be casting upwards, because the sun, no matter how much it's smushed into the horizon, will never be below what is Wolfie's horizontal.
It would, because Wolf is above the ground.
So that means the sun would physically be going below it. Because if it's not physically, then it can't physically cast a sun ray upwards, Rachie. It can. But it does. But that means it would be physically. All right. You cannot not physically be doing something and still cast rays. You're talking round in circles and you're contradicting yourself. It either appears to go below the horizontal or it doesn't. It either physically goes below the horizontal or it doesn't. And it doesn't even appear to. But that's the thing. It doesn't even appear to go below the horizontal if the Earth is flat. There's no reason for that to happen.
Smushing and angular resolution and all that.
Yeah, and none of that makes it ever go below the horizontal, because, as we know, parallel lines do not intersect.
Go below the horizontal.
Right, if it doesn't actually go below the horizontal, then it cannot actually cast rays upwards, can it?
Right, but the appearance of the angle and how it changes is actually how the angle of the light changes.
No, because that would only be appearing to and not physically. You can't have both of them together. It either appears to be something or it physically is something. It only appears to go below the horizontal because of it going into the distance, but it would never actually drop below the horizontal if the Earth was flat. It just could not happen. You could never, ever, ever, under any circumstances,
but it never
have the sun casting. Well, that's exactly. You're right. It never does, Rachie. Which means it could never, ever, ever cast a sun ray upwards into Wolfie's cockpit and make a shadow on his finger above his finger. If the Earth is flat, that can't happen. All right. I challenge you to model it in a way on the flat Earth that shows that it could happen. Because there is no model that could ever show that could happen. You just have to invoke magic smushing and random stuff that makes no sense. Yeah, angular resolution, that means the angle here is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and the angular resolution has nothing to do with the sun appearing to fall below the horizontal. Not going to happen.
Because that's part of the smushing.
So you're saying the smushing inverts the angular resolution that we're seeing. Smushing that Lemon Bird refers to only refers to smushing into the horizon that the sun appears to do. It doesn't talk about the sun going below. So even you right now are misrepresenting Lemon Bird's own argument, which is batshit crazy to start with.
What I'm saying is, when you know those two circular things, when you look for images on angular resolution and you got those two circles side by side.
You're talking about the Rayleigh criteria.
That's apparently a part of it as well. Yeah, I haven't looked
apparently,
that much into it.
It is. That's what flat earthers, another thing they completely fail to understand is the Rayleigh criteria. But I need you to understand here how what you're suggesting is impossible. You cannot, if the sun is physically above Wolfie's plane, if the earth is flat, have it casting rays as though it was below it. Even if it appeared below it, because it is not physically below it, it cannot physically cast a ray upwards. Simple.
I guess we'll have to agree to disagree on that one.
I mean, you can agree to disagree, but that means you would be wrong. Come on, Rachie. This is no, opinions are irrelevant here. This is facts. You cannot have something physically above something appear to
work on your model.
But it does work on our model because of the fact that the Earth is spherical and it's rotating away from or towards the sun, which means that from Wolfie's point of view, the sun would appear below. It works on your model at face value
until you dig more into it.
There's nothing in our model that shows that it wouldn't work. It only works on our model.
Okay, so for starters, you've got parallel light, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so how do you get an umbra and penumbra with parallel light?
Quite easily. They're irrelevant. An umbra and a penumbra are just to do with the amount of photons going through a certain point and constructive and deconstructive interference of wave-like patterns. So, there's no issue with having an umbra and penumbra with parallel light. In fact, Mr. Sensible did a couple of experiments using torchlights showing that you can still get an umbra and penumbra. So,
the torchlight is divergent?
Well, if you're right up close, it's going to be parallel. If it's the same size as the thing casting it. And there's no reason why with parallel lights you can't have an umbra and penumbra, and that doesn't debunk our model in any way. Again, what you're seeing, and it's also nothing to do with the fact that Wolfie saw the sun below him casting a shadow upwards, which is something that is physically impossible.
The sun. So when he saw the sun, would you agree he didn't see a point light source, that he saw a circle?
That's what I would call a circle, is a kind of a
sun,
point light
right?
source.
Yeah, okay. So that means that the rays have to be divergent.
No, it doesn't. It's really, really big and really far away.
Exactly. Really, really big, really far away. Yet you see from one side of it to the other side of it, you see a circle, right?
Yeah, because it's really far away. Yeah, that's how that works.
Which means that
little cow, big cow, far away cow, close cow.
That means that the light from one side of the sun, so let's imagine a beam of ray from one side and a beam of ray from the other side. In order to see that, in order to see the circle of the sun and not a point, you have to have it coming at you from both sides, meaning it has to come into your eyes from both sides of the sun to get that circle.
The sun rays that reach us are still parallel. Well, practically parallel. I mean, they're off by like they're off by like a millionth of a degree. All right, they're not 100% parallel because it's just a circle thing that's really far away. It is if you did the maths, it's off by something like 1/1,000,000th of a degree. But they're practically parallel because of the size of the sun and but mostly because of how far away it is. The same reason why starlight appears to reach us parallel is simply because of how far away it is. All right. But you absolutely would be able to see it, and I could model that out for you quite easily. In fact, just download on your phone from the Google App Store the solar system scope, which can actually demonstrate that quite easily for you. But Rachie, you are trying. Yeah, it all is based on how our model works and shows the rays of light, how they would be coming. But you're trying to divert away from the fact that you saw a shadow above the finger, which means the sun would have to be physically, from that point of view, below it, which is impossible on a flat Earth. And that's something that you have to concede. There's no way it can happen unless you invoke some kind of magical property of light that no one else has ever heard of before.
But I've explained that.
You made up some smushing and stuff that it bears no resemblance to reality. The fact is, you could never... Rachie, come on. You need to stop trying to make it fit when it clearly doesn't. The only way what Wolfie saw can happen is if the Earth is a globe, the sun is really far away, and Wolfie was tilting away from it. That's the only way what you saw happening in reality can actually happen. And it actually leads on to one of the other points that I wanted to bring up, which I know is giving you issues, and that's how we can see the angle of Polaris change when we're moving away from it, right?
Yeah.
So, right, but okay, I'm kind of changing the subject myself. I want to be done with the Wolfie thing, and I want you to understand, without invoking some kind of magical thing, that what we saw in Wolfie's plane is impossible if the Earth is flat with the sun above us. It just couldn't happen unless you are saying the sun is physically below, because the sun rays were cast upwards. But the sun on the flat Earth would never physically be below the sun, the plane.
I disagree with that, and I can show you a picture which might help, but I'll probably have to send it you later because I don't think I can do it on this.
Yeah, a picture showing something apparently will never physically have the sun below the plane. You understand that?
But it's not below, that's the thing.
Well, if it's not below, then the light can't be casting up. That's all we need to talk about with that. All right?
Okay, yeah.
Right. So anyway, Polaris. And so if I described this in my video where I completely destroyed the flat Earth's use of the sextant, if you're right underneath Polaris, you know, the GP of Polaris, then Polaris is 90 degrees above you, all right? You move 60 nautical miles away, or 69.1 statute normal miles away, then Polaris drops by 1 degree in the sky. You move another 60 nautical miles away, Polaris drops another degree in the sky. And I did the maths based on the triangles that you get there. And it shows that based on how far away you are, and if you get the distance, the adjacent at the bottom, you take that distance and you can use that to do some trigonometry because you've got a triangle and find the height of Polaris. Now, if you're using figures from reality and you plug in every 60 nautical miles you move away, Polaris drop in by 1 degree in the sky, something happens. And that means that the opposite gets smaller every time. The height to Polaris, which you can calculate with trigonometry, depending on how far away you are, physically changes. We know in reality, when you move 60 nautical miles away from Polaris every time, it drops by 1 degree in the sky. And that gives us data that we can use. And when you use that data and plug it into equations that are basic trigonometry, you find that in reality, it means that the height of Polaris would change. How does that work if the Earth is flat?
I don't know, but how does that work if the Earth's a globe?
Perfectly, because the rays of light are reaching us parallel.
Okay, but
so
1 degree.
Yeah.
1 degree per 69 miles. Would you agree that's a linear?
1 degree per 69 miles. It is, it's a linear thing. It keeps going. Yes. And the only way that can have that 1 degree drop every time is if the surface is curved. All right. So you keep that
surface is linear.
The
the
function is linear, but what it's describing, based on what the angles that are coming in and using, if you were trying to do trigonometry, would show that it works only on a curved surface. Well, there's no triangles involved. Is the fact that how celestial navigation works, and what you get is because the Earth is 360 degrees, that means that every degree would be 60 nautical miles. Because of how big, the Earth is 360 degrees, so 1 degree, 6 nautical miles. And that works because the Earth is curved, so that angle keeps being 1 degree. Because as you get, I need to bring up paint again so you can see.
No, I understand that. That's not the point. But the point is if it drops linearly, then the surface should be linearly. I understand that, 24,000
no, I don't think you are using those words
69 miles.
there.
I understand that. I don't need you to show me that. I understand that.
Right, so if you understand it, then what's your problem?
My problem is it's not linear, the surface, so I don't know. I don't get how it can be linear when the surface isn't linear, even though I know what you're saying about 1 degree per 69 miles, like in the circumference and that. I get that, but the surface still isn't linear, so how can it drop linear? But then you're going to do the maths with the circumference and just say that's how it drops like that. But
yeah, because that the maths works out, and it shows if the rays of light are coming in parallel to us, that means that the degree here is going to change, and this degree here changes by 1 degree for every 60 nautical miles that you go away. So if each of these gaps were, they're obviously not, it's exaggerated, but if each of these distances was 60 nautical miles, then the degree to, Polaris would change by 1 degree. But because the Earth is curved. But it doesn't work if the Earth is flat, because it means that you can do trigonometry, because you would have to have triangles involved. And when you do the trigonometry, it shows that the height of Polaris changes.
right, but to get the angle, you still need a horizontal.
No, you don't. I don't. You heard that from Nathan Oakley and you parrot it. Sextants work by using an artificial horizon. That's it. It's very, very. My video explained it all. There's no issue.
You mean the bubble sextant?
No, just any sextant. You can use an artificial horizon with any sextant.
But if you're using a horizon, you're still using a horizontal line, aren't you?
Well, it's not horizontal, because you're usually above the point of the horizon when you're taking it, which is why there's horizon adjustment corrections and 2 types of horizon adjustment they're called dip corrections. You've got the dip to the horizon correction, which is when you're using a standard sextant sighting the horizon, or if you're using an artificial horizon, you have to use something called the dip short of the horizon to make sure that you're still using that plane that you need, the tangent that you need. And you have to use the tangent so that you can get the angle. But it only works when you put it onto the surface of a globe. And Austin Whitsitt and Nathan Oakley bleating curved adjacent is ridiculous, because you also can measure an angle to a curved adjacent. In fact, bridge engineering is kind of based on that very premise.
Really?
Yeah. Would you like a quick video? Did you not watch my sextant video?
I didn't see how you measured an angle to a curved adjacent.
Well, I'll let someone a lot smarter than me quickly explain that to you. Let me bring up the video. So when he talks about measuring an angle to a curved adjacent, he's showing that he doesn't understand how angles work in the slightest. Let me just find the video. Flerfs are idiots. So my computer's running slow now. Oh. Here we go. Oh, you're struggling to see my actual screen, aren't you?
I can see.
How about a practical...
Can you see the video I'm showing right now, or is it still paint?
Yeah, I can see. Is it like no, I can't.
Right, let me share the screen to you so you can actually see that then. Alright, there we go. You should be able to see that, yeah? You see the green curved line?
Yeah, with the angle,
right.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so this is Flat Earth math, and he's going to explain how you can quite easily measure an angle to a curved adjacent, as they put it.
How about a practical example of measuring an angle with a curved baseline, like this one?
Yeah, it's not an
I'm
adjacent,
pretty sure
obviously.
that what you've been arguing this entire time is based on a diagram just like this.
Are you showing a video? Because all I can see is
just
like a
like my
green line
chalkboard
with
example,
a curve.
we don't
just
care what the extended sides of the angle.
Yeah, it is the video. Just listen to what he's saying. And obviously, it's not even the adjacent. That's one thing they get completely wrong. Oh, it's a curved adjacent. There's no triangles involved in celestial navigation, so you wouldn't have an adjacent in the first place. But then they switch it to a curved baseline, which is what Flat Earth Math is describing here. So just listen to this. It's like 1:20 long, okay?
I'm pretty sure that what you've been arguing this entire time is based on a diagram just like this. Just like my chalkboard example, we don't care what the extended sides of the angle are doing.
I'm supposed to be hearing something now.
In this case, one of them is a giant curve.
No.
Oh, for God's sakes. Hold on. Sorry, guys. For some reason, my audio wasn't going through to Rachie.
Shut the fuck up, you cunt!
Did you hear that?
Shut the fuck up!
Yeah.
Right. So you should be able to hear flat Earth math then.
Doesn't matter. All we need to do is zoom into the vertex and take our measurement. Let's reorient this angle and see what we're really talking about.
Oh, it's because I hadn't clicked that.
It turns out to be
here we go.
Baseline, like this one.
Oh, it's because I hadn't
I'm pretty sure that what you've been arguing this entire time is based on a diagram just like this. Just like my chalkboard example, we don't care what the extended sides of the angle are doing. In this case, one of them is a giant curve. It doesn't matter. All we need to do is zoom into the vertex and take our measurement. Let's reorient this angle and see what we're really talking about. It turns out to be the angle where a cable meets the tower on the Golden Gate Bridge. Let's zoom in to the top of the tower. The blue semicircle is called a saddle, and 4 of them hold up the entire suspended mass of the bridge deck and all the cars, trucks, and pedestrians on it. At peak capacity, the suspended mass is 200,000 tons. So we can divide that by 4 to get 1 saddle. Our question is, what is the tension in the cable? It turns out to be a function of both suspended mass and the angle theta, using this formula. Tension T equals weight supported by the saddle, W, divided by 2 times the cosine of theta, the angle the cable makes with the tower. Nathan, please tell Quantum Eraser that we could do trig without triangles.
Yeah, Nate, he wouldn't understand. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of irrelevant because we don't use triangles and there's no adjacent in celestial navigation. But it's also, it shows how the people that you are listening to, Rachie, that are bleating things like, oh, you can't measure an elevation angle with a curved baseline, don't have a Scooby's what they're fucking talking about, because all we need is the vertex. All we need is the point where, you know, the 2 meet, and that's where we would measure the angle from. And that's where we would be if we were doing the celestial navigation. So, you know, everything that you listen to from Oakley and Sleeping Warrior shows that they just don't have a fucking clue what they're talking about. And there is no explanation for how, if the Earth is flat, the angle to Polaris changes by only 1 degree for every 60 nautical miles. And I know you had issues with that before, and I want to try and drive this home. There has to be, if the Earth is flat, it has to have a cohesive explanation for all of the things that we see. All of the things that we see in reality. And what we see in reality is the angle to Polaris, or any celestial object, changes by 1 degree for every 60 nautical miles that you move away from it. Which does not mathematically make sense if the Earth is flat.
Well, yeah, I ain't got no mastery. I can tell you that. I don't know how it can drop 1 degree. Like you said, you know, like I've had issues with that myself, so I don't know.
So, the fact that it's explained on a globe and not the flat Earth. The fact that what happened with Wolfie is explained on the globe and not the flat Earth. The fact that all of the observations we see and all the maths and experiments we do are explained with the globe and not the flat Earth has to start making things in your head click, right?
I wouldn't say that. There's a lot of things where they do it with flat Earth, but like, and I disagree with the Wolfie one, but the Polaris one, I ain't got a rebuttal for now.
I don't see how you can disagree with it, because the sun never physically goes below, so it can't physically cast a ray upwards. Don't care about what appears.
I know what you're saying, but I disagree with that. What you're saying, you just don't really understand what I'm saying, but I don't really want to go round on that
Now,
one.
and
You know.
if the Earth was flat, right, and celestial navigation worked, which it does, then why has no flat earther attempted MC Toon's challenge?
Because you need a a horizontal, and you haven't got one.
We
On
have.
a
We use
curved
tangents. We use we use tangents, and we can take an angle from a vertex, so it's absolutely fine.
Well, I need to do that. What I'd like to do myself is do it myself, but I don't know. But
Well, if you want to do it yourself, you know,
I
here's
don't know
the
the maths in there,
thing.
baby.
MC Toon isn't only doing his challenge, but we're giving away a sextant as well. Loki Fish Mars will send you his sextant for you to do it yourself and figure it out. Yet, not
But
one
if
flat
like him
earth.
sending you a sextant, it would be useless.
What? No, he's sending you the instrument to get the evidence yourself. That's the
Yeah,
thing.
but it would be like him sending it you. It'd be useless. The weather's terrible. It'd be on point.
Well, then you don't need to use. It doesn't matter. You can use a puddle on the floor to get your angles.
Not only that, I don't know how to do the maths for that. And then like, we don't just get it off the mainstream. We have to figure all this out ourselves. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, yeah,
maths.
but the
I don't
thing
know.
is, celestial navigation works. It has worked for centuries and centuries, right? You agree with that?
Probably.
I mean, I can tell you it does. I've used the sextant myself to navigate the seas. You know, every Royal Navy warship has a sextant installed with a reflecting pole in front of it. You know, they use the sextant in space because it works the way that we say it does. You know, sextants work. Celestial navigation works. And because it works, with the method that it works, means that it has to be a globe. But if the Earth is flat, none of those methods are correct. All the methods that we use to get the measurements for the sextant, all the calculations that we do, which actually take the circumference of the Earth into account, would all be wrong. Which means that somehow we've managed to use sextants and other methods of celestial navigation successfully for hundreds and hundreds of years by doing it wrong. Do you see how that doesn't make sense?
But yeah, but if you think about like reverse engineering things, like how do you know it's not just turned into a globe from a flat place?
There's no
you know what I mean?
reverse engineering involved in celestial navigation. It works because we do these measurements. There is no flat method for you doing celestial navigation because, you know, Nathan Oakley and Stephen Warrior and you know, Mitchell from Australia think that you use triangles. Think that you use right angles from the GP. Think that you point
To be fair, they have got citations and even one of NASA saying that, so
No, they
can't blame them.
they don't have citations of it saying for celestial navigation you use triangles. You know, there simply is
They
none.
do. Quantum horizons has showed them quite a few times.
No,
As has
what-
Nathan Oakley, I believe.
But what he shows, and I've actually showed the same paper, what he shows is a example and a thought experiment for if there was a flat plane and there was a pole in the middle, you could find the elevation angle. But then the very
No, that was
next...
flat
but the quantum razor was using the same citation, and the same thing. It says underneath that to do celestial navigation, the circle of equal attitude is actually spherical in nature. So
Now, can you use one from NASA saying about using triangles and right angles?
but was it about celestial navigation?
I
No.
believe so. That's what he was
No.
using it for.
But we can show why a sextant works from spherical geometry of the Earth and how it doesn't work if the Earth is flat. So regardless of what citations they're misquoting, and you notice how they will never show the entire papers, only the little paragraphs that they think backs them up, very much like Flatsoid. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
but they'll give you the link
what
as well
they-
that you can.
Yeah, and when we look at the link, we find that it actually describes the celestial navigation method correctly every single time, right? But it doesn't matter what citations they misquote. It doesn't matter what methods they misunderstand and try to apply, because we can actually show how a sextant works with the Earth being spherical in nature. We can physically show that. We can calculate, you know, the distances to things using the spherical geometry. We can actually find the distance to a GP using spherical geometry, and there is no way to do it if the Earth is flat. There simply is no way to do it that matches reality. It's impossible. And that's why no one's done MC Toon's challenge. No one has $10,000 just sitting there waiting to be claimed, and no one has even attempted it. You know, if I was a flat earther, I'd be fucking running, you know, pushing you guys out the way to get to that challenge. 10 grand, the Earth's definitely flat. Well, they're going to give me something to prove it. Why has no one attempted it? Because they know they can't do it. Why, when I debated Hip Hop Hippie about sextants, did he not even attempt the navigation challenge, which I nailed? You know? It's because the Earth is spherical, and these things work because the Earth is spherical. Right? And these are the things you need to look at. These things that are making you think, Rachie, you know for a fact that the 60 degrees per nautical mile and 1 degree per 60 nautical miles, you know that that doesn't work on a flat Earth. You know it. In your heart of hearts, in your mind, you know that that doesn't work if the Earth is flat. And you know that it works if the Earth is a globe.
I wouldn't say it doesn't work, but the height doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It just doesn't work unless there is multiple Polaris, Polarises, you know, North Star. Unless there's multiple North Stars, then celestial navigation doesn't work on a flat Earth. And if you want,
you've got refraction and everything to take into consideration.
And that's why we have refraction adjustment tables, which are empirically proven calculation and calibration tools that have been fine-tuned over centuries and centuries. As long as we know the height above the surface, the apparent distance to what we're trying to sight, and the temperature at where we are, we've got the refraction tables to adjust for it. And when you do the adjustments, when you do the calculations for those actual adjustments, the adjustments match a spherical Earth.
How do you know the apparent distance?
Well, because you can sight to the horizon, or you can sight to something that is a known distance away. And if you're sighting to the horizon, we know how far the horizon is away based on how far above it we are. And I wanted to show you one thing. Oh God, it's not in here. Oh no, there it is. Yes. Oh no, it's not the right one. Okay, so I've actually got, I can't find it right now, but there's an image of someone mapped out the data for the refraction adjustment tables, and it shows that it actually matches a curve. I'll send that to you privately because I don't know where that is right now. Right, so
the curve of light refraction.
Well, of where the adjustments would match to. Let me just see if I've got it. One sec. Oh, right, just give me 1 sec. I'll see if I've got it here. If not, no. I'll have it in there because I used it in my video. So I'll get it to you separately. But anyway, you know that it doesn't work if the Earth is flat, and you know it works if the Earth is a globe. So we need to push on with that. What else works if the Earth is a globe, but not if the Earth is flat? Pendulums. Now, I think pendulums completely and utterly kill the flat Earth.
No, I've got problems with pendulums.
Okay, so here's how it is. We can use a pendulum to calculate our latitude on Earth just from the drift induced while it's swinging. No matter where it is on the planet, we can use the direction of the drift and the angle of the drift of a swinging pendulum to accurately calculate our latitude on Earth within a margin of error, usually about 0.5% or something. But it works. There's experiments of it being done in the South Pole. There's experiments being done all over the world, and it always matches the expectations because the Earth.
Does it matter which direction you swing it in?
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter which orientation you swing it in, because the swing stays relative to the rotation of Earth's axis. So it doesn't matter which way the swing is started in, it will always drift. If you're in the northern hemisphere and the pendulum starts swinging, it will drift clockwise. If you're in the southern hemisphere and the pendulum starts swinging, it will start drifting counterclockwise. Doesn't matter which way it, where you started from, which orientation it's in, it will always do that rotation, matching the latitude on Earth. And that is because of the Coriolis forces being induced onto it, because of the difference in movement from one side of the swing to the other, applying the forces, making that drift happen. And that only works if the Earth is a globe. The maths works out if the Earth is a globe, right? But let's ignore the maths and why it works on a globe for now, and focus on the fact that we know that there is a drift, right? We know that when we do the pendulum, we get that drift.
I disagree with that.
What do you mean? Is this empirically shown via experimentation?
I've only seen one, and that was the gentleman physicist, I believe he's called.
Oh, well, I can send you maybe 30 or 40 different experiments. One in particular I like showing was where they did it at the South Pole, and got the predicted drift that you would expect at the South Pole. There's many experiments done all over the world all the time, right? And if you doubt it, then you would have to recreate it yourself to try and disprove it, right? But I can tell you for certain that when the experiment is done properly, wherever it's done on the world, we get the expected amount of drift, right? So the question has to be, if the Earth is flat and non-rotating, why does that happen?
My question would be, well, if it don't matter which way it swings in, then you should get different drifts, shouldn't you?
No, you shouldn't, because
if you're swinging it, if you're swinging it east to west, the way it's rotating, or meant to be rotating, and if you're swinging it like north to south, then it's not meant to be rotating that way. So you're not going to get the drift one way compared to the other.
The drift will do an entire rotation in 300. Well, depending on where you are. If you're at the North Pole, the drift will do 360 degrees in 24 hours. For every degree that
you don't know that's
well, we do. It was done at the South Pole, and that's what we got.
The 24 hours.
Yeah, well, the geographical South Pole is just off of what is the actual axis of rotation. So they got 24.24 hours, which was based on their location, exactly what they expected to get.
And how did they keep that swinging?
It didn't. They had to calculate the period of rotation by taking how long it swung for, dividing 24 hours by how long it did to get t, which is your period of rotation. So you let it swing for as long as you can. So if it only swings for 3/4 of an hour, you take the drift that you got in 3/4 of an hour, and you do the maths to figure out how long it would have taken to do an entire 360 degrees, which is t, your period of rotation. All right. So you let it swing for as long as you can, and you take the data from that. And whenever it's done, wherever in the world it's done, you get the ability to calculate your latitude on Earth. Right? And like I said, for now, let's just assume that I'm telling the truth, and this does happen, even if you doubt it, Rachie. It does happen, right? The question has to be why it happens if the Earth is flat and non-rotating.
It could be a million reasons.
Like,
you don't know
name one. Name one.
Name one.
Yeah.
Kind of electromagnetism.
It doesn't matter the material. You still get the same drift. Therefore, electromagnetism is not a factor.
The ether.
Yeah, because if it was different materials, then electromagnetism would create a different force.
I said the ether. The ether. The ether.
Well, the ether doesn't exist, so there's nothing... And the ether wouldn't rotate at a different amount depending on the latitude on Earth, unless you're suggesting the ether rotates specifically around Earth, but slower the further away from the North Pole
agreed that it existed.
No, he didn't. He talked about replacing it, and that's literally what general relativity was. Earlier
in
on,
1920, did he?
Earlier on, he talked about a replacement for ether, and what he was talking about wasn't the luminiferous ether that they proposed existed before the time of Marcus and Morley. But
it's still endowed space with physical properties.
No, that wasn't what Einstein was talking. Einstein was talking about something completely different, which could be considered an ether, but it wasn't the luminiferous ether that they were talking about that existed throughout space and time. And also, Einstein later recanted those what he was talking about when the theory of relativity was a lot more developed. So people can say things earlier on in their time and then go, actually, I was wrong, and here's the evidence that I was wrong. And we know Einstein is right because he's being proved right all the time with everything that we see in the universe.
You have a quote where he says that he's wrong about it because I have a quote saying that he says space has got these properties. So if you have a quote saying that, he said, actually, I was wrong.
He talks a lot about how general relativity is a replacement for the ether.
But this was in 1920. General relativity was in 1915. So this was after.
And
This was
he
5
developed
years
it.
after.
Developed it more and more as he went on. All right, but what they were not talking about in any capacity was the luminiferous aether, which was the proposed medium that light would need to travel through and would cause a drag as Earth moved through it. So what Einstein was talking about would not be something that could impart any kind of movement onto a swinging pendulum, especially a different amount depending on where you are. All right, so you're just making up ad hoc excuses. There's nothing about what Einstein talked about that could affect a pendulum.
I'm not making up excuses, but this is the thing. We can say, and speculate this, that, and the other until you actually determine the cause by changing, manipulating the cause. And you can't really say what the cause is.
They've manipulated by changing the position on Earth. That in this case, if you're talking about the experiment and you want to go Flerf about it and you want to talk about IV and DVs, that's very, very simple. The IV in this case is the position on Earth. That is the independent variable. The position on Earth that the experiment is performed in. The dependent variable is the measured amount of drift from the swinging pendulum.
And so how do you know changing your position doesn't change like the magnetic field, which it does, or some other kind of field,
again, because it doesn't matter the material it's done with. There's no electromagnetic interference. It can be done in a Gauss chamber, blocking out any electromagnetic interference, and you still get the same results. All right, we know we change the position on Earth, we change the IV, and it matches the predictions, and that's what you do with science, Rachie. All right. You make a prediction and you test that prediction. You don't then look at the results you get and go, oh, you know what? That could be something else we haven't thought of. You make a prediction, and you test that prediction. And that's what they've done with the pendulum. Prediction is it should drift this amount based on where you are, and that's what happens. There is no explanation that makes any kind of sense for why a pendulum drifts the amount it does based on your position on Earth if the Earth is flat and non-rotating. However, it makes 100% sense in every law of physics that we understand that it should do what it does if the Earth is a rotating globe.
I'd like to see somebody make a prediction and then actually do it and see whether the prediction matches for a start.
The gentleman physicist did that.
I didn't see him make a prediction.
They talk in the video about the first prediction was that it would rotate clockwise. In the experiment in the South Pole, based on their position, they made the prediction that they should get a certain amount of drift, and that's what you get. And that's what it is. Anyone that does the experiment, you get the predicted amount of drift based on the latitude that you are. In the case of the gentleman physicist, he kind of did it backwards, and his prediction would be that he could use the drift to get his latitude. And that's what he did. So he used the drift that he got, did the maths that you need to do, and he calculated his latitude on Earth. And it was within 1.4 degrees, which is like a margin of error of 0.3%. And again, it's been done all over the world. But it's, margin of errors are a thing in experiments. And you saw what crude equipment he was using. But again, it was a margin of error of like 0.3%, which is pretty damn good. But there's experiments with even lower margin of error. But the fact
but he
that
did have 3 things on the floor next to it, on one side more than the other side, like
those were ink pads, and he's actually got a link to the entire video, the entire thing, and those are ink pads. And what it is, when one ink pad dried up, which took about 10 minutes, they just swapped out another ink pad. Just so that you could keep getting that's all those were. And
but it's a bit weird that there's more on one side.
That's just where they were, and that's just the paper. The paper's already held down. They're just ink pads. They're not magnets or anything. So
just looked a bit suspicious. That's all.
It looks a bit suspicious. Isn't how science works, Rachie.
I mean,
It's
you got
an-
to take all these considerations into effect. That's the thing, ain't it? You can't just say, "Oh, yeah, that's that." You know what I mean?
Well,
You
unless you're
always yourself.
you would have to make the claim that he's lying and that he's manipulating it somehow, which goes into the realm of conspiracy theory, which we don't need to talk about here. The fact is, this is a repeatable experiment that has been repeated hundreds of times around the world. At the South Pole, in universities all around the world, it's going on in museums constantly with just a magnetic kick to keep it swinging that does not affect the amount that it drifts. And every single time,
But how do you know that?
because of the way it's designed, it is just designed to give it a boost backwards and forwards. There's nothing.
You would say that.
Nothing
How do you actually know that?
because of how it's designed. There's nothing in it designed to make it change. It's nothing physically that they could do that to make it. It's just a pendulum on a pivot point going backwards and forwards, and they give the ball a magnetic kick to keep it going. That's it. But if they did it without the magnetic kick, it would still go for a certain amount of time, and then you could use the drift in that amount of time to calculate the period of rotation and do the maths the same. But it's once again, Rachie, it's something that has a plausible 100% reality-based explanation on the globe Earth. But if the Earth is flat and non-rotating, it does not make sense at all. There's no explanation for it. You can make up all these ad hoc nonsense things, but nothing is cohesive. Nothing is factual. And there's no experiments to demonstrate it. But the experiment to show that the Earth is a globe and rotating works.
Well, if you did it over a bigger distance, would it be a bigger drift?
What do you mean over a bigger distance?
Like, say, instead of doing it over a metre swinging, if you did it over 10 metres swinging or something.
So if you had like a longer string and it was able to swing for further, no, you would still get the same amount of drift.
But shouldn't you get more, being that there's more Coriolis effect acting on the different tangential
There
velocities?
wouldn't be more Coriolis effect acting on it. There would still be the same amount of Coriolis force acting on it at every point along the path of the pendulum swinging.
Coriolis force is the tangential velocity, right?
Yeah, that's what causes when something's moving in a straight line path is a difference in tangential velocities. So with a pendulum, because it's got a pivot point which is attached to the Earth, it allows the pendulum's swing to stay relative to the axis of rotation. Which
So it's not a difference of tangential velocity in that one?
Yeah, it is. You can do the maths and actually calculate it out that way. But the easy way to explain it is that it maintains its swing relative to the axis of Earth's rotation, which is why when you move further away from the center, that period of rotation becomes longer, because it's maintaining its swing relative to the center, which it's moving further away from. Okay.
See, to me, it's actually have more drift if it was going further away, because you're going to have different tangential velocity in your model. So if you did it over a metre, there'd only be so much tangential velocity difference.
But at every point in the swing, there's the same, the correct amount of Coriolis being applied to it to make that drift happen. So it doesn't matter what the amplitude of the swing is. It's still going to have the same drift and the same period of rotation. I've got a couple of papers that actually go. Hold on, I've got a couple of papers that go quite deep into the maths that I'm willing to let you have a look at, and maybe in your own time you can try and have that explained to yourself, or I could go through them with you. But it's because the Earth is rotating, the pivot point is rotating with the Earth, which means that the swing of the pendulum maintains its swing and its position of swinging relative to the axis of Earth's rotation, which means that the Coriolis force at each point of that swing is applied to the bob, making that drift happen. Yeah, Regliptic is right. It's confusing to explain the pendulum as Coriolis, but it is Coriolis, but it's confusing to explain it as Coriolis. It's easier to explain the base mechanics behind what's happening before applying the apparent effect of Coriolis to it. But the entire point here, Rachie, isn't about going into why it happens on the globe Earth.
No, it's how does it happen on a flat Earth? Like I say, that I don't know unless you can manipulate it some way.
But it doesn't. But it doesn't. The fact is, it can't happen on a flat Earth, and that's two things that for a fact cannot happen if the Earth is flat.
I wouldn't say cannot happen. Just I can't explain it.
No, they can't. It can't happen. There's no ad hoc explanation or reason for it to happen. It just cannot happen if the Earth is flat. Now, there's a couple of ex-flat earthers in the chat that maybe you would like to talk to. How do you feel about
that? Okay, sound whatever, yeah.
Ranty, I see Ranty and STST both there. If either of you would like to come in, just hit me up on Discord. Because whilst I'm waiting for you guys to come in, I wanted to talk to Rachie about, deep breath everybody, gravity. Right.
My favourite topic.
Yeah. So the problem is that explaining things in a basic way is very hard when you didn't learn it in a basic way. And even in a physics degree, you don't really touch on general relativity and Einsteinian principles. Okay? Because even in a physics degree, everything is based in the Newtonian world. Because we live in a Newtonian world. For our purposes, we can calculate everything in using Newton's laws. Newton's laws of motion, Newton's law of gravity. It's things that are used every day in real life. And that works for us. Despite on a very small scale, it being a little bit inaccurate, it works for us. And it's a great way of explaining things and dealing with things in an everyday world. All right? But then if you want to look deeper into why those things are happening, that's what general relativity is. It explains why we can measure a force. It explains why there appears to be an acceleration. It gives the mechanism behind why mass appears to attract mass the way that it does. But it explains it so much deeper and with so much more accuracy. It doesn't mean that Newton is at odds with Einstein, because they're not really at odds. Even though Einstein explains things in a way that says, yes, it's not a force, it's not really an acceleration, that doesn't stop the fact that in the world that we live in, the results of everything that Einstein is describing is that we can measure a force. And we can use that measurable force to do a whole bunch of things. Including one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about, and it's something I'm surprised I've never really brought up before, and that's that submarines use gravity in real time to help them navigate, right? And this isn't based on like a world map or anything, because storing that amount of data is impractical and silly. But submarines use real-time measurements of gradients of gravity to avoid things like underwater mountains. And I wanted to go through some of that with you and ask how your relative density disequilibrium explains what submarines can use to be measured to help them navigate. But I want before we do that, I wanted to. What do you think about what I've said about Newton and Einstein?
Well, I can say my point of view, but I understand your point of view. So you're just going to say what you did say, basically. But yeah, I disagree. Obviously, you're going to say about the.
You remember when the song that was done for you, and you said that you understood?
Yeah, but no, see, that's what I'm saying. I understand what you're saying, but it still doesn't make sense.
What about it doesn't make sense?
Because, see, from your point, I get your point of view now. I didn't before, but you're basically trying to say it comes from a change of reference frame, from being in a non-inertial reference frame in Einstein's general relativity.
Yeah, but I want to be even more basic than that. I don't
want to be basic. I want to know.
But that's the thing, right? You're trying to skip the basic and go straight to the understanding the complicated, and that's where the problem comes from, right?
No, the problem comes when you teach Newton, and Newton is no longer. Yes, you're still using him. I know you're going to say you're still using him in engineering, this, that, the other, whatever. You know what I mean? But that's not the point. The point is, you teach everybody Newton and that, and then they never learn about Einstein. And because you never learn about Einstein,
you do learn about Einstein.
Do you know what I mean?
If I did my master's and then my PhD, I would have learned a lot more about general relativity. But for the level
they don't even tell kids that it's been for lack of a better word, because I know you're going to moan about it, superseded?
Because they really don't need to know anything other than how to figure out a Newtonian world. All right? If you're trying to give kids an idea about how the world works, right? And if you start chucking general relativity at them, it's just going to confuse the matter. What you want to do is teach kids, right, this is how we can calculate how the actual world works. This is the forces that are involved, the experiments that we can do to measure things. You want to give them that base knowledge of trying to understand how to unravel the universe themselves, right? And once they've
you're lying to them.
You're not lying to them, because that's how it is. Newton is
But it's
Newtonian
not, because
physics.
gravity's not a force.
But that's what I was trying to say. Whether gravity is actually a force or not doesn't matter to the world that we live in, because we can measure. Wait, hold on. We can measure a force created by gravity within a Newtonian world, within the world that we live in, for engineering, for making bridges, for constructing spacecraft, for building buildings, everything. When you take into account what Newton told us, it allows us to live our life. Right? It allows us to design bridges. It allows us to design aircraft. It allows us to design incredibly fast cars because we live in a Newtonian world, because that's the level that we are at. But then when you want to understand why that happens, why it happens, why there is a measurable force, why there appears to be this acceleration, if you want to understand why that happens, that's what higher education is for. And you would go on to learn that in your master's and your PhD. But because that's not needed, we don't need to know about relativity. We don't need to know about Einsteinian calculations. We don't need to know about Einstein's tensor equations to give his version of gravity. When we're building a rocket or we're building a car or a bridge, we don't need to know that. We just need to know for us what matters, and that's what we can physically measure. Why it happens is a different story that you will learn if you want to go into that. And it might have...
They don't even tell kids that, though. They don't even say, no. You want to learn it later on.
No, they absolutely do. I remember specifically my teacher talking about, he did the whole sheet demonstration. He brought in like a rubber sheet that he put over a barrel, and he put the big ball in the middle. And he was like, this is why there appears to be that force. He briefly touched on it, and that's kind of a standard experiment in visualization. But then it goes back to, we don't need to know the ins and outs of why that happens for our general life. If you want to go and be an engineer, right? If you want to go and be an engineer that builds something incredible, you don't need to understand relativity. You need to understand Newtonian physics. But if
you don't need to understand Newtonian gravity either.
You do. You absolutely do. If you want to build a bridge successfully, you need to understand Newton's law of gravity.
Why?
Because that is what would give you the apparent force that you would need to take into account.
What force?
The apparent force that is created.
What force?
The apparent force that is created. In Newtonian physics, there is an apparent force.
You're talking gravity?
Yes. And in Newtonian physics, there is an apparent force created by gravity. All right?
So what you're saying is roughly an acceleration rate of 9.81?
Well, depending on where you are on the Earth, that changes quite a lot. But in the world that we live in, which is a Newtonian world, we don't need to worry about general relativity. We can calculate a force. We can calculate a force based on the apparent acceleration. But that doesn't mean you're using
gravity to do it. You're using an observation of things falling.
That observation is called Newton's law of gravity. That's what the observation is, right? And that's what Newton called that observation. He called that observation, that apparent attractiveness, that apparent force that is created by that acceleration, he called that gravity. And he called that law, that Fg equals g m1 m2 over r squared, Newton's law of gravity, because it's a law. It works every single time. You can calculate, you can do the experiment yourself. You can build your own Cavendish experiment, and you can use Newton's law to derive the gravitational constant yourself. Because in the world that we live in, what matters to us, the result of everything that Einstein explains, is that we can measure a force. Just because there's a much deeper explanation as to what's going on doesn't ever change the fact that we can measure a force. We can measure the acceleration that creates that force. These are things that are empirical, right? And Einstein never made Newton go away. He never said, "Oh, you know what? Newtonian physics doesn't work anymore." In fact, he clearly stated that
he essentially did with his laws of motion.
No, but he literally said that you could never get the basis of physics that came from Newton out of physics in general. It doesn't matter. Nothing that he says, nothing that Einstein ever said stopped Newtonian physics working, right? And Newtonian physics works fine. It always has and it always will. You know, we can use Newton's laws of motion. We can use Newton's law of gravity to calculate all the things that we here on Earth in a Newtonian world need to calculate. But if you want to know why that happens, if you want to know why there's an apparent attractive force, if you want to know why there's that acceleration depending on mass, if you want to know why, then go and study your masters in physics and beyond and learn about general relativity. But you know what? Even general relativity doesn't give the complete explanation. There's much deeper explanations.
They don't really know what gravity is. No,
you're absolutely 100%. We still don't know the absolute reason why mass warps space-time. We know that there's something to do with an energy exchange, right? But this is the thing. None of that changes the fact that Newtonian physics works, always has and always will, which means that it's never going to be a lie. It's never going to be a lie to tell children you can measure a force created by gravity. That's not a lie. That is a fact. You can measure a force. It's not. No, it's not a lie because you can measure the force. If you can measure the force, then it's not a lie.
So how do you think they would feel when, say not your own kids, because your own kids probably know, but so say you've got some kids and they learn that, you know, gravity's a force, and then later on they learn, oh no, gravity's not a force. So hold on. Again, this is something that flat earthers get in their head. Gravity's a force. In Newtonian physics, gravity isn't a force. Gravity creates a force. The force of gravity. Gravity itself isn't a force. Gravity creates the force that we can measure. And it's not lying to children to tell them that you can measure that force, because Rachie, you can measure that force. You can calculate the acceleration based on the mass. And the distance. You can use Newton's law successfully to figure out every variable in that equation. So it's never a lie because it works. Just because there is a deeper explanation as to why it is happening doesn't ever stop Newtonian physics in that, limited explanation being a true fundamental fact of nature that we base so much of our world on. So much of our world is based on the fact that Newton's laws work, they always have, and they always will. Just because there's a more deep explanation doesn't mean Newton was a lie. But it is a lie.
It's not a lie, because you're not telling children lies. You are telling them you can measure a force.
You are when you're telling them it's a force, it's not.
What did I just say? You don't tell children gravity is a force. You tell children you can measure a force created by gravity. Is that a lie?
I don't tell children that gravity is a force.
No, you tell. I just told you, right? You tell children, and you actually give them experiments to demonstrate that you can measure a force created by gravity. Do you agree with that?
No, that's what I'm saying. So you're telling me that teachers tell kids, they don't say to kids basically that gravity is a force?
No, they teach them that you can measure the force created by gravity. You don't even really get taught Newton's law of gravity at high school. You kind of actually get into that a bit more in A-level and university level, right? But even in high school, you're taught that you can measure that acceleration due to gravity and calculate the force from it. You're taught that that's how the world works, because it is. That F equals ma is a fundamental thing in the Newtonian world that we live in. Or A equals F over m, whichever way you want to arrange the equation. It's a fundamental fact. If you've got an acceleration, you've got a mass, you've got a force. It doesn't mean you're calculating that force out of nowhere. That just means that you've got an acceleration and the mass, and it means you've got a force. And that's a fact. It's a fact of Newtonian world that we live in. It's a fact of engineering. It's a fact of everything that we can observe. That if there's a mass and an acceleration, it equals a force. No, he didn't. He didn't ever say that isn't true. He said this is why it's happening. It's not really a force. It's actually this entire thing that the end result of is that in the Newtonian world, you can measure that force that is created by gravity. Every time you step on a scale...
So explain to me how it creates that force.
Because, right, so this is where we need to talk a bit about relativity, right? Which is beyond what you would really learn at a high school level. But I still want to try and keep it basic, right? So, Einstein says that mass warps space-time, right? General relativity says that mass warps space-time. And the best way to visualize that is visualize space-time as a 2D sheet that can bend. And imagine a trampoline. And you put a big ball in the middle. That ball is warping the material, right? You agree with that? You put a big ball on a trampoline right in the middle, and it warps that material.
I know what you're saying, but actual physicists don't really like that demonstration. But
I know, but it's actually a good way to talk about it to lead from Einsteinian to Newtonian, right? So, if you now put a smaller ball near that big ball, what's going to happen? That little ball is going to move towards the big ball, right?
It'll roll down, but that's a physical thing, ain't it?
Yeah, right. But that's what's happening. That's what's happening with space time. Okay. Let me finish. The big. Right. This is what Einstein says. The bigger the mass, the more that space time is warped, and the more that space time is warped, the more things of less mass will move towards it, because everything travels in a straight line. But if it's moving in a straight line along that curved space time, it's going to, from an outside reference frame, appear to accelerate towards the big mass, right? That's what you're seeing. You're seeing, because the space-time is warped, you're seeing the smaller mass accelerate towards the bigger mass. There's no real acceleration there. All it is
in the center of a sheet, yeah?
Yeah, but there's no, in the sense of relativity, there's no real acceleration there. All it is something moving in a straight path along a curved surface, which from the outside perspective shows... refresh. It does that like once or twice per stream. I'm not sure why. So
probably a drop in internet.
It should be back. Right. So we can see that the bigger mass has littler things moving towards it because the fabric that it's on is warped. And that is what's happening in space-time. But then if we take that into a Newtonian world, there's the acceleration and the masses from our perspective, which means that in the Newtonian world, we can then calculate the force from it, which for us would be our weight. You know, we've got our mass and we've got the acceleration that is acting on us because the big mass, the Earth, has curved the space-time and we're moving towards it, which in the Newtonian world gives us the acceleration on our mass, therefore there's a force. And I know that it's not the most accurate representation, but it's the basic way of understanding the link between relativity and Newtonian physics. Newtonian physics shows that there's a force that we can measure. Relativity shows the reason why that happens and why it's not really a force or even an acceleration. But the result of that is that for the world that we live in, from our reference frame, everything that's happening, that's how we perceive it. Doesn't change what's physically happening. Sorry,
I want you to explain how it can appear in our reference frame.
Because for us, right, we're just seeing the masses move based on whatever is the biggest mass warping spacetime. You know, that's all we see. If we see that something's big, really big, we see that things move towards it. You know, but that is because the bigger thing has warped space-time more, making the things that are traveling in a straight line path move along a more curved surface. And now the big problem is extrapolating that image in your mind of the sheet of the trampoline into 4D space-time. It's a complicated thing to do. and that's
Oh,
part.
yeah,
That's part. That's part.
What is even 4D?
Well, 4D.
3D plus time, yeah, but
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're already in 4D.
We're not
and
talking about
that's okay.
fourth dimensions as like a fourth dimensional being. We're talking about the 3 dimensions of space and the 1 dimension of time. And we,
In which
you know,
case you're already in it, aren't you?
Sorry.
In which case you're already in it.
Yeah, you are in it. So you because you're in it, you experience everything that's happening as an acceleration, which you can measure the force from. Right?
But if we're in 4D, why can't we perceive 4D?
We do perceive time. We're perceiving time right now. Time is
But
traveling.
you say that we can't perceive it, so therefore it looks like an acceleration to us.
Yeah.
Because we can't imagine it as 4D.
Oh no, it would still look like an acceleration, even if you could perceive the warping of the fabric in 3 dimensions. You know, I probably shouldn't have said 4D because we can almost leave time out of it for the explanation that we're trying to do. But you know, you imagine that fabric.
You say you can leave time out of it, but time is actually what causes gravity in your model.
That's wrong on quite a lot of levels.
It's not. There's PBS Space Time does a video on it, and he's saying that time warps, which then causes gravity.
Well, time changes depending on how much space-time is warped. That's what we experience. That's what we've observed. But again,
yes, the space-time is wrong.
Rachie, I'm trying to keep things simple and just.
But that's the thing. I don't want simple. I want.
But you need you need the simple. Rachie, you need the simple. That's why you don't touch general relativity until you get to masters, because it needs to be simple. Otherwise, you're not going to understand it, and that's why we teach kids the simple stuff. Because they're not going to understand relativity if we chuck them out. If we chuck relativity at them and say, now calculate how fast.
Kids, to be honest with you.
Oh, no, I'm not. Trust me, I've got kids. I'm not underestimating them at all. And, you know, I've taught my son maths. I did a lot of homeschooling. And I taught him algebra. But I couldn't have taught him algebra if I hadn't taught him basic arithmetic. You know? I couldn't just all of a sudden go, here's algebra, if I taught him no maths to start with. You know, you need to walk before you can run. And that's why the problem with you, Rachie, is you're trying to understand general relativity before you've understood Newtonian physics. Once you understand Newtonian physics, and then you can see why that is the result of what's happening with what Einstein described in relativity. And that's all it is. That's all it is at the end of the day. It's a different way of explaining what's going on, but a fucking massively more complicated way of explaining what's going on, and a much more accurate way of explaining what's going on. Which
you say that, but within the equation, M1 and that, like, how did you even get M1?
The mass of M1, M2 are the mass of 2 objects.
Yeah, but I mean in the Earth in this case.
The mass of Earth has been measured in many ways. In fact, the Cavendish experiment was used to measure the mass of Earth.
Yeah, but how?
By using the gravitational constant and the amount that it was adjusted by. You can actually, the Schehelian experiment was also the same way. You can use the mass of the Earth to see the way that the experiment is all affected, and derive the gravitational constant g from doing all those calculations. There's many ways to measure the mass of Earth, and in fact, you wouldn't even need the mass of Earth as part of the equation if you had all the other parts. If you can measure the force, which is a weight, and you got one of the masses, and you had an idea of the radius of Earth, you could then figure out what the other m was just by rearranging the formula. You know, you don't have to know the mass of both things if you know all the other variables. And
maybe, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd have to see
So
the calculations.
you're not right. See, all the back and forths we've had about, you know, what Einstein said and what Newton said, we're both right, right? We're both right, but we've also both got some things backwards, because it's very hard to have the conversation about complicated things before you had the conversation about less complicated things. Plus, I didn't study relativity in my BSc. You know, most of that is when you go further on. But then we know it creates a force, because that's why I wanted to talk to you about how submarines use gravity, right? They have gravity potentiometers on board that can measure the mass of things underneath the submarine and the gravity of what it is to give you a real-time map of what's below you. You know, and how is that possible if gravity isn't real? How is gravity used to map in real time what's underneath a submarine?
I don't know, you tell me, it's your claim.
Using a gravity, you know, a gravimeter, and I've got the, where is it? I've got the paper here. How do submarines?
You don't think it'd just be easier to use a radar, like sonar?
A radar doesn't give you everything you need to know. Oh crap! What's going on there?
What dropping something in a gravimeter does?
Say that again. Sorry.
But dropping something in a gravimeter does tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah,
but not
because
sonar or radar.
well, sonar isn't always an effective way to do things, because if you use sonar, it's not only you that can hear sonar; it's every submarine around you. You know, every ship. You know, sonar is sending out sound waves, and the idea of submarines is that they're stealth, right? Now, can you see the screen that I'm putting up? How do submarines use gravity gradients to avoid collisions with underwater mountains?
No.
Let me share the screen. There we go, that one. So, how do submarines use gravity gradients to avoid collisions with underwater mountains? Gravity gradiometers in use today have their origin in naval special warfare because they ensure safe navigation and accurate detection of underwater objects. Submarines rely on accurate detection of their surroundings, and gravity gradiometry is a passive technique that does not compromise the submarine's position because it is a technique that does not emit energy like a sonar. So the sonars are great because you can use the real-time data from sonar to map your surroundings. You can even use sonars to follow whales and see the wakes left by other ships and submarines. But it emits energy, which other vessels, enemies, can detect. The thing about gravity gradometry is because it's a passive technique done by dropping basically atoms through vacuum chambers in a mechanism and seeing the difference in the two tubes that you would drop the things through. It doesn't emit any energy outside of the submarine. It just does it based on the attractiveness of the mass below it. So if there is an underwater mountain, there's going to be a slightly higher mass, and that will make the test mass inside the gradiometer accelerate at a different rate, which will give you real-time mapping data to show that, oh shit, there's a mountain we should probably avoid, otherwise we're going to crash into that. Which, I mean, I probably don't have to tell you is a bad thing in submarines. You don't want to crash into underwater mountains. But they've been used for many, many years. The US Naval began to explore civilian applications for it in 1997, but up until 1973 it was actually classified kind of military technology. But it's used not just by the military these days, it's used by mining companies to find where there's oil underground. They can hire private submarines. And if anybody wants this, I've got this is what PhD Tony sent me, and I've actually got a few other things that I have as well, but this is a much better one than what I had. I'll put the link for anyone to go and find that. And it's not just the military that use it now for finding underwater mountains. It's civilians that use it to find mineral deposits, to find hard metals. It's a widely used application around the world, and it's even used in satellites. The same kind of technology is used in satellites to be able to find mineral deposits under the sea in the same way. And the fact that this is a known technology that is used every single day and is based on Newton's law of gravity, not relativity. Relativity was kind of irrelevant to it, to be honest, but it was based a lot more on what we understood about gravity from Newton. But we can measure the difference in acceleration. And that kind of kills a lot of the RDD dead, right? Because there's no way that relative density disequilibrium can explain what's going on in a gravity gradiometry mechanism that is measuring the difference in acceleration from mass underneath and real-time mapping the ground. There's no way that RDD can explain that, is there?
Well, no, but that's just a story, ain't it? I mean, you haven't actually proven that.
It's not just a story, it's something that's used in submarines every single day.
Yeah, but like, how accurate is it? Like, you're
Very,
obviously
very
saying it's
accurate.
Oh yeah, of
Extremely
course. But
accurate.
Where's your proof? Where's your evidence that it's accurate?
Well, the paper that I've been showing has a lot of reports and
That's
stuff
not
on it.
evidence. It's written words. It's paper. It's not evidence.
So written words and papers are evidence. Well, the demonstration is the fact that it's used on submarines and civilian vessels every single day.
Yeah, but how accurate is it when it's used? Like, where's the demonstration to show?
Very
that
accurate,
accuracy?
because they can find mineral deposits and don't crash into underwater mountains.
They're not going to crash into it if it's beneath them.
How are they going to know if it's not beneath them? How are they going to know if it's not rising up slightly and they're going to crash into it? They need to be able to see what's coming, and it doesn't just look straight down. It can look in all directions. It can measure everything. You also got to take into account when you're doing this the speed of the submarine and everything, and it can in real time map the surroundings underneath the submarine to tell them where the underwater mountains are to avoid, because submarines can go quite deep, and some mountains come relatively close to the surface that are underwater. And the practical example of it working is the fact that it's on submarines, and the fact that it's used for mineral exploration. The fact that PhD Tony has been involved in this kind of technology from a much more space orientated position, and then you called him a liar because of it, Rachie.
I didn't call him a liar.
You did call him a liar.
How did I call him a liar? When? Where?
In the chat in one of my streams a couple of weeks ago.
I didn't call him a liar.
You said that nothing he was saying was true.
Would you like to show me a screenshot of that or something where I said nothing you said is true, you're a liar?
The entire conversation was you telling him that what he was saying wasn't true. And when he said that he couldn't use the very expensive equipment to do a personal demonstration for you, you got very indignant and started claiming that it was all.
You actually look back in your chat. He actually started on me. I came in here first, and I was talking to people before the show even started. Then he came in, and then he started on me. Then we had a back and forth. I says to him, because he started going on at me, I'm this, that, the other, mocking me, shouting at me, kind of thing. And all I says to him was, I've asked you to do a demonstration and that to prove this to me, that would debunk relative density disequilibrium for me if you could demonstrate it. And you said you couldn't. Fair enough. End of story. Do you know what I mean? But then like, he come into McToon's chat later, MC Toon's chat later on, and was like, don't call me a liar because he says scientists want to know or need to know, and I said want to know or need to know or I care or something like that. And basically, he was saying I was calling him a liar over that, which is ridiculous and just pathetic in my opinion.
Well, no, the thing is, Rachie, by merely questioning the fact that PhD Tony knows what he's talking about and uses these machines, is calling him a liar.
Yeah, which is great. So show a demonstration. He couldn't. Okay, then don't expect me to just believe your word just because you apparently have authority.
So you are calling him a liar. If you don't believe that what he does for a career is what he does for a career, then you're calling him a liar. And
I never said I don't believe it. I said I'd like.
You just said you don't believe it. But here's the thing. Here's the thing.
I'm not saying that there's not a change in acceleration rate or there's not a change in the weight or something. What I'm saying is,
give me a sec.
Prove it's accurate.
It's accurate because it's used every day, right? But here's the thing, right? PhD Tony is a fucking genius, right? He is someone that has spent his entire life dedicating his knowledge and his experience to unraveling the mysteries of gravity and using that, in industry. It's what his life has been, and it's
some evidence.
Right.
It couldn't. Okay.
The evidence is that it exists. The evidence is that these things exist. The fact that they're used. The fact that gravity gradiometry. People are paid big bucks to use this to find minerals for companies,
And all I was asking for was for an accuracy thing and to put a mass above it, a mass underneath it, a mass to the side.
But what you're asking, hold on.
Fair enough, end of story.
What you're asking is for Tony to use a very sophisticated piece of technology to prove something to
I'm asking him to prove a claim. He makes a claim about it, and I'm asking him to prove the claim. If you can't do it, that's not my problem.
But the claim is proved by the fact that it's used every day. The fact that the same kind of technology is used on submarines to map for underwater mountains. The fact that civilian ships use it to find oils and minerals. The fact that it is used every day is proof of the claim. And
Except when
whether you realise it, hold on, Rachie, one sec, Rachie, hold on, right? The problem is that whether you realise it or not, you are calling PhD Tony a liar, and you're not just calling PhD Tony a liar. You're
I'm asking him to back up his claim.
Wait, hold on. You're not just calling PhD Tony a liar, but you're calling all of his colleagues a liar. You're calling everyone that has ever studied gravity a liar.
I'm asking him to back it up.
Well, the fact that the proof that Tony can present is the fact that this technique is used
Words on paper,
worldwide.
like me writing unicorn.
No, the fact that it's physically used by companies. People pay for this to be done. That is the proof. The fact that submarines physically use it to map the world underneath them so they don't crash and kill everyone on board. That is the proof. Just because they can't
map the world underneath them and they can tell what's underneath them, but yet they got everything wrong in that borehole.
Boreholes underwater by submarines, Rachie, please don't change the subject.
Doesn't matter, they can use a gravimeter to tell you what's underneath apparently, but then they got everything wrong in it. So they can't tell you, can they? And then you can't even show how accurate it is. That's not my problem.
I don't think they use gravimetry to check the borehole. The fact that it's used every day to find minerals for people, right? And here's the thing, Rachie.
It's a nice story, yeah?
It's not a nice story. It's a fact. It's used. It's a billion dollar industry that is used worldwide. The submarines literally use it to navigate. It's not just a story. It's something that physically happens. And you're questioning. Well, that's because you obviously haven't looked for the proof of it, Rachie. But for you to say to Tony that...
Tony, who apparently, works with it, the one that actually can have access to it, the one person I know who has access to one, he couldn't, not my problem.
Yeah, but he's under no obligation to use a really expensive bit of kit outside of what it's designed for.
And I never
to
said
prove
he is,
something
but all
to
I'm
you,
saying
right?
is I had
But then you don't get to question him. You don't... Wait, hold on, Rachie, please. You don't get then to question his validity of his claim because he can't use that specific piece of equipment to show you something that you've asked for. That's called pseudoscience. You're giving unrealistic expectations.
No, it's called
science.
Asking you to back up your claim.
But there is many papers that you can read that will show that this has been done. And just because it's written down doesn't mean it's not proof.
Papers are never going to convince anybody. When will you understand that?
Well, I'm sorry. So unless it's physically recorded and you see it yourself, then it's not evidence. Is that what you're claiming? Because that's not how these things work, Rachie.
Testable, repeatable, and demonstrable. And if you can't test it, you can't
exactly, Rachie. Hold on. Exactly. Science is testable, demonstrable, and repeatable, and it's used every single day, repeatedly. It is testable. But that doesn't mean just because you don't have the technology to do it and you can't personally test it, doesn't mean it's not testable and repeatable. The fact is it is used every single day, and you have to accept this. Submarines literally use it to navigate. This is a fact, and you have to accept that.
Demonstration.
Submarines not crashing into underwater mountains because they use this passive equipment.
Of it.
That is, how is submarines using it for its actual purpose, not a demonstration of it, Rachie?
Well, you say them. I haven't seen you show me that they're using it, or even that it's accurate for that matter.
Well, just read the papers that describe it then.
Hey, papers can write. So I can write. Oh, I had a gravimeter. It was 100% accurate.
Right. Okay. Well, here's what you have to do then. Here's what you have to do then, Rachie. Rachie, here's what you have to do then. Build your own fucking submarine and test it yourself. Until then, you don't get to question the claim. You do not get to question the claim unless you have personally.
Claims, okay,
no. You don't get to question the claim when all the evidence is there. Just because you deny the evidence being there.
Paper.
Yeah, and that's evidence. Just because you deny the evidence.
Paper's not evidence.
No, shut up. I'm talking right now because you're starting to piss me off. All right, you do not.
Answer the chat, to be honest with you.
You do not get to question the claim when all the evidence is there. No, you don't. No, you don't. You do not get to question the claim when all the evidence is there. Just because it's not your. Right, shut up. I'm talking right now. Hold on, Rachie. I'm talking right now. You do not get to question the claim because it does not meet your specific standard of evidence. The fact is, there is countless peer-reviewed articles about this. There is countless experiments that are documented and shown of these devices doing what they say they do. The submarine grometers that submarines are used, the paper that I have in front of me.
That show them. I'm asking you to show me. You can't.
Yeah,
you just said there's many that show me. Show me. You can't.
Yeah, all the papers that are describing the experiments.
There's many that show me. Show me.
Yeah, it's all recorded in papers. All the peer-reviewed articles.
Oh, so not showing it then.
Yes, in peer-reviewed articles, Rachie, that is showing it. That is how you demonstrate something in science, is you write a peer-reviewed article saying that it's been done, and if someone wants to test it, they're welcome to test it. But you do no wait no you do no stop. You do not get to question peer-reviewed science because it does not meet your specific standard of evidence. What you are doing there is pseudoscience. You are demanding stop interrupting me when I'm talking. What you are doing is demanding specific standards of evidence that only you will accept. That is pseudoscience. Do not.
No, I'm asking for evidence for the claim.
All the peer-reviewed articles are evidence.
I think you're getting angry over this one point as well, isn't it? Tony got angry over this. You're getting angry over this.
Because you are being very dishonest.
Many demonstrations.
Rachie, you are being dishonest. Yes, the demonstrations have been recorded in peer-reviewed articles that you can check yourself.
Peer review does not mean a demonstration. How many times?
Peer review articles of a demonstration does mean there's been a demonstration done. Just because you
show me a demonstration, you just said there's
just
many.
Because
show me any though, can you?
Because it's all recorded in peer reviewed articles.
Yeah, can't show me any. So
it's all apart from all the peer reviewed articles, Rachie. No, we're not leaving it because you do not get to question the claim when there is plenty of evidence for the claim.
Just we don't need to prove nothing there.
All the peer reviewed articles are the proof.
No, it's written paper. I can write words on paper too. Doesn't make it true.
Well, then just because you can write words on paper doesn't mean you could put it through peer review. All right. What you are doing is being dishonest, Rachie. You are being dishonest.
Says the one who can't back up his claim will show any
I absolutely can.
There's many demonstrations.
Yeah, and here's one of the papers. Here is one of the papers with citations and references. Here is one of the papers.
Google the definition for demonstration and see whether it says a paper.
Here is all the references.
Google definition for demonstration.
Yeah, demonstrations can be written. Demonstrations can be written down, right?
Yeah. But Google definition. Google definition.
Rachie,
Google definition.
Rachie, here is all the references.
Google definition.
Rachie.
Yeah, can't.
Stop it.
No, you're wrong.
Stop it. You are being dishonest, right? This is your final chance.
That's the one who can't Google definition.
You can Google definition on your own. It doesn't change the fact that it has been demonstrated.
It doesn't change the fact that you don't know what a demonstration is.
Rachie, stop it. You are being fucking dishonest now and pissing me off. Stop it.
No, you am, yeah.
No, stop it. All right? This is your last chance. This is the last chance you get with me and the last chance you get with this community. All right? We have tried and tried.
Oh, do you think I care?
You should care. Here's the thing.
I'll give you a nasty pieces of work anyway.
Says the person that fucking follows someone's child predator, yeah. Says the person that follows someone that slaps their kid live on the stream, yeah. We're the nasty pieces of shit. How many flat earthers have told me to kill myself? How many flat earthers have told me that they will actually kill me? How many flat earthers want to fight me? We're not nasty pieces of shit. That's flat earthers. And here's the thing, Rachie, right? You do this because you want attention. You would get a lot more attention if you were a glober debunking the fucking... Yes, you do want attention. That's all this is about. All this is about is you getting attention.
What I want from you is proof, demonstrations. If you haven't got it, you haven't got it.
I have got it. Just look for the peer-reviewed articles for gravimeter testing.
That's not a demonstration.
That they contain the demonstration. They contain references of the demonstration of the things they are talking about. That's what peer review articles are. They contain all of the evidence. But you haven't even looked for the evidence, Rachie. All you want is your specific own standard of evidence, which means you are pushing pseudoscience because you want your own specific standard of evidence, which is outside of what is there.
Do me a favour. Google the definition of pseudoscience.
Yeah, one of the definitions of pseudoscience is requesting specific standards of evidence.
Googly.
Yeah, part of pseudoscience.
Googly.
Part of pseudoscience is requesting specific standards of evidence.
No, you're wrong.
You can Google whatever you want, Rachie, but part of pseudoscience is requesting specific standards of evidence that do not match what everyone else has done.
No,
shut up, Kevin.
Pseudoscience means that you think that you're going to with the scientific method, but you're actually not. Now,
yeah, there's a lot more to pseudoscience than just that.
Show me a mass above, show me a mass to the side, show me a mass beneath. Can't do it though, can you?
There's a lot more to pseudoscience than just that, Rachie. And one of the parts of pseudoscience is requesting your own specific standards of evidence. All right? Do not push pseudoscience. Do not question things that you are too
pushing
lazy
pseudoscience,
to.
can't back the claim.
No. I absolutely can, because I've got all the peer-reviewed articles that can back up my
No
claims.
demonstrations.
Yeah, they contain the demonstrations in them.
No demonstrations.
Yep, they contain all links to everything and
Google
all you need
definition
to know.
demonstration.
Right? Have you even looked?
Do you even know what demonstration
Have
is?
you, Rachie? Have you even looked? Rachie, have you
Do you
even
know what a
looked?
demonstration is?
Rachie,
What's a
have you?
demonstration?
Rachie, have you even looked for the evidence?
What is a demonstration?
Rachie, have you even looked for the evidence?
Yes. Now,
Where?
what is a demonstration?
When did you look for the evidence? Where did you look?
I just
Tell
answered
me.
one of your questions there. You
So,
answered
no,
mine.
no,
What is a
shut up.
demonstration?
This is my show, and I'm answering the questions right now. What did you do to look for the evidence?
Looked for the evidence. What did I do?
How?
Look for the
What did you
evidence.
do? How did you look for the evidence? What did you do? Where did you search?
YouTube, Google, papers, scholar papers.
Oh,
online.
you wait. So
Google,
you looked for the evidence in papers? You looked for the evidence in
asked the
papers?
PhD
You looked for
Tony,
the evidence in
you actually
papers?
worked
Did
with
you?
them. Couldn't
Did you
help
look
it.
for
What
the
do you want
evidence
to
in
do?
paper? Rachie, did you look for the evidence in papers? Did you?
That's not evidence. How many times?
Oh, but you just said you looked for the evidence in papers. You're now backtracking on what you've just said.
Evidence in papers, which then will relate to a demonstration, as in
Yeah,
here's a
yeah.
paper. On
Right,
the-
so
hold
show
on.
me the papers that
Hold
you
on.
show me the papers that you looked for then.
Here's a paper on this.
Show me the
demonstration,
papers that you
then
looked for.
Here's a link to the demonstration.
Show me the papers that you
There.
looked for. Show me the papers that you looked at then.
What do you mean? Show you the papers? Look, I've got them all right now, right here.
Send me a link to one of them.
I can't right now. I'll do what you do. I'll send you later. Which, by the way, I'm still waiting on some for the last ones that you hadn't sent me.
Well, I'll give you 2 minutes right now. Go and get one and send it to me.
Any paper.
Yeah, any paper about geometry and the thing we've been talking about. One that you specifically been looking up. Go and get it for me.
And why? What? Why?
Because I don't believe you.
Oh, you don't believe me? Well,
I don't
that's funny, 'cause
believe
I've
you've actually looked for the evidence.
I've sent them
Because
to other
if
people
you've
and
looked for the
speaking to
evidence,
other people about
if you've
whether
looked for the evidence,
parameters
you would have
and
found
everything,
it.
And then I was copy and pasting things of it. I don't give a shit whether you believe me or not.
If you looked,
Rachie,
Rachie, if you looked for the evidence, you would be able to, you would have found the things that you were looking for.
I can get a demonstration of a mass above, a mass beneath, and a basket to the side, showing that it doesn't change in that same scenario. They're basically in that position. They can do it 10 times a day, and there's no
the
change.
demonstration is every submarine in the world that has this active on it.
Yeah, show me.
A submarine? You want me to show you a submarine?
No, don't show me a submarine. Show me the demonstration.
Yeah, the demonstration is submarines using it every day.
Show
That
me.
is the demonstration.
Show me.
Submarine, the UK submarine movements
Yeah,
are
unicorn
actually
fairies do
secret.
it every day. Yeah.
Yep. The fact that these
Yeah,
pieces of
plants do it,
equipment,
this do it, that do it.
Rachie,
Yeah, that's all you're saying. You're saying words,
Rachie,
you're
the
not showing
fact that these pieces of
demonstration.
equipment exist and are used every day is the evidence. Are you denying it's used every day?
Yeah.
So you're calling people liars then?
Well, you haven't showed anything, have you?
No. Are you denying it's used every day? You said yes. Therefore,
Am
you
I
are calling.
denying that people are claiming things and they haven't provided evidence? Yes.
So you're calling
I am
people liars.
saying that people
So you
are
are
claiming
calling
things and
people
not
liars then.
providing evidence.
Rachie, you have failed on every single level to even do the most
Good for me.
basic amount of research. All right? I have shown you things today that are conclusively proof
You say I
that
haven't researched and I haven't done it and that.
yeah,
I've
you-
asked
you-
PhD Tony, literally somebody who works with them, for evidence. If he cannot provide evidence when he works with them, then nobody can.
well, maybe
It's as
contact a
simple as
company
that.
and ask them directly rather than an employee or something. Have you done that? Have you found a company that uses it and written them a letter asking them to demonstrate it?
And what do you think they'll do?
Have you or not? Yes or no?
And what do you think they'll do?
Have you or not? Yes or no?
And what do you think they'll do?
Answer my question. Have you done it? Yes or no?
No, because I went to somebody who apparently works with them and then
Right,
didn't do it.
okay,
because
so-
they could have asked somebody.
So
or
what
rather
if that
they couldn't do
person
it.
has an NDA that says they're not allowed to do those things? Right? Why don't you instead
Why would
go
they
to
have
the
that?
what? I don't know. But why don't you instead go to a company that uses it and ask them?
Well, I went to PhD Tony who works within a company.
No, go to the actual company. No,
What?
don't go.
I don't know
don't-
any of the companies. Two,
Well, find them then.
as if they're even going to probably reply. Three, you know what I
Uh,
mean? They're not going to do it. If PhD Tony can't do it and he literally works with them, then nobody's going to do it.
PhD Tony doesn't run the companies, does he?
Nobody runs the gravimeters, apparently.
Yeah, but he doesn't run the companies, does he? All
But
right.
when he uses gravimeters,
So,
what's
here's
wrong
the
with him
thing.
going, hey, here's a video. All I got to do is press record.
Maybe he's not allowed. Who knows? But why don't you go to the company? Why don't you, instead of going to an employee, go to the actual company? Because you're too lazy, Rachie. Because you don't care, Rachie.
All right, I'll go to the company. Then what when they say, okay, now we are showing you?
All right, well, then you try and find one yourself. Build one yourself. Go to another company. Find other papers. Find references. Find scientists.
Well, all I've got to do really is drop something several times, ain't it? And we all know it doesn't drop at the same rate, don't we?
That's really not how it works. Oh, my goodness. Right, Rachie, I have shown you things today that are insurmountable proof that the Earth isn't flat. And you have just made up a bunch of shit. You've really disappointed me. Really,
Says
really
the one who
disappointed
can't show
me.
demonstrations.
Yeah, I can show you countless peer-reviewed articles, which is how science works.
Yeah, lovely papers, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly how science works. And it's not my fault that you don't like science.
Science is experimentation, not written words,
Yeah.
mate.
Well, science involves
Yes, so show
peer
me the
review.
experimentation.
Science
Show me
involves
science.
peer
Show me
review.
experiments.
Science involves
Can't do
peer
it, can
review.
you? Can't show me science because you
Yeah, I-
work in pseudoscience.
No, I can show you all the papers that have all the references to it. I can show you the actual documents of it physically working. But you will just deny it
No
because you didn't see it
demonstration.
yourself.
People-
Because
what
you
don't
are the
understand.
one that
Anybody
pushes
can write
pseudoscience.
anything.
You are the one that
you
doesn't
push
care about
pseudoscience
truth,
because you ain't
right?
even got an
This is
experiment.
your final chance,
The
Rachie.
definition of
You-
science is experiment. You haven't even got an
The
experiment.
definition of science
because
is
you're
not
pushing
experiment.
pseudoscience.
Oh my god, who told you the definition of science was experiments, you fucking moron?
Did I say that?
You literally just said that! Those were the words that
Well, I
just
said-
came out of your dumb mouth!
I said science is experimentation. I never said pseudoscience
Right,
was
give me
experimentation.
a citation that science is experimentation.
Do we really have to go through these?
Yeah, because science is
What
not
do you think science is then if
experimentation.
it's not experimentation?
Science is not experimentation. You are making shit up. Rachie, it is used every single day. You are calling people liars. That's why PhD Tony got angry, because you doubted the fact that he does his job. You've doubted the fact that he has spent his life studying, right? And that was wrong. What you did was wrong. And if you were a decent person, you would say sorry to PhD Tony for doubting him at all. But you're not a decent person, Rachie. I've tried to work with you, but you're not a decent person. You're a liar.
evidence
You're a
against you.
manipulator. You're an attention seeker. That's what you are. Right? I have naively tried to help you over and over and over. Explain to you how Coriolis works. Demonstrated with experiments that the pendulums do what we say they do. Showed you what gravity does. Explained to you the difference between the Einsteinian and Newtonian. But you just doubt it all because you refuse to actually listen and learn. Because you are fundamentally a dishonest person. And you've been brainwashed. It's fucking sad that you've been brainwashed, but that's it. You cannot break that brainwashing. You want to live your life in ignorance, and that is sad. You want to support people like Sleeping Warrior that tells the world he preys on children. That's what you do. These are the kind of people that you support. This is the kind of world that you are pushing, with those people trying to be at the forefront of science. The deniers, the liars, the deceivers. Those ones. We are the ones with the evidence. We are the ones with the experiments. We are the ones with the peer-reviewed evidence and papers that back up what we say. But because it doesn't meet your specific standard of evidence, you're going to deny it and call everyone else a liar. That makes you a dishonest person, Rachie. We have tried to help you. We have tried and tried and tried to help you. But you don't want help, you want the attention. And you can't deny it either. I'm going to send Ranty an invite. Hey Rachie, I have a triangle of sides 2, 2 and 2. What are the internal angles? Have you rage quit?
You muted me.
No, I didn't mute you.
Well, it says here that my microphone was muted.
You must have muted yourself then, because you have the ability to unmute yourself, so there's no point in me muting you.
No, it said that well, I was muted. I know how to mute myself, and it doesn't say that normally.
Yeah,
So
I didn't mute you. I thought you were still there.
No, but basically what I was trying to say is if you actually look up the definition of science, it tells you it's through observation and experimentation because science is experimentation. But
Science is not experimentation.
What are the internal angles of 2, 2 and 2? 60, 60 and 60.
Yeah, cool. Well done.
You know why it's 60 and 60 and 60? Because that's what a triangle is, because no such thing as a spherical triangle, and triangles have 60 and 60.
Sorry, did you just say there's no such thing as a spherical triangle? Did you just say there's no such thing as a...
Why are you asking that question?
Because it's always funny to hear what flat earthers say.
Because triangles normally have 3 straight sides, because that's what the triangle is.
Apart from spherical triangles, of course. Sorry, say that for me once more. Say spherical triangles don't exist once more. I dare you. Go on. Say spherical triangles don't exist. I dare you.
What do you mean you dare me?
I dare you to say that again. Go on. Please tell me once more, Rachie. Does a spherical triangle exist? Yes or no?
In your made-up reality, yes. In real world, no.
So in the real world, there's no such thing as a spherical triangle.
No.
There is no way to calculate a spherical triangle on the face of a sphere. Is that what you're telling us?
Triangles have straight lines. That's what I'm telling you.
So you're denying spherical triangles exist, Rachie? I just want everybody to hear this, because you know what? I'm done trying to help you now. You have shown your ignorance and your inability to want to even learn. So I just want now
you've shown that you don't even know what science is. Science is not experimentation. According
science
to
is not just experimentation. No, there's a lot more to science than that. But you wouldn't get it. Rachie, you wouldn't get it. It's science.
Definitions to know you wouldn't.
Rachie, you wouldn't get it. Rachie, you wouldn't get it. It's science. You wouldn't get it. Hey, Draco, how you doing, my friend?
You can't even Google the definition, which tells you it's observation and experimentation. You want to say science is not experimentation? What kind of science are you doing?
Is science just experimentation, yes or no?
Observation. You have the observation, and then you do an experimentation to determine the cause of that observation, but you wouldn't know that because you
Well, you just missed a whole bunch of steps, but you know.
Because you do pseudoscience, you don't even believe science is experimentation. Wow.
No, Rachie, there's so much more to it, you fucking moron.
Experimentation is part of science, but just doing experiments is not doing science. There is a lot more...
Any chance Noah?
No, this is my friend Draco Fire. Hello, Draco. Welcome to the channel, my friend.
Draco, I don't believe we've met, Rachie.
I was gonna say hello to the open because I thought I knew. I never mind.
No, I don't. I
just want to say hello to Kevin, who's watching, and is he wants to date Rachie. I mean, dumb likes dumb, I guess.
Sorry, Draco Fire. What was you saying?
I was saying that you have a mistaken idea that just doing experiments is science, and that is not the case. Science consists of a lot more than just experiments. It consists of first of all, making an observation. That's kind of what leads you on the path to the next step, is seeing something that happens, and you think, oh, why does that happen? Mm-hmm. And so then what you do is you say, I think that happened, like, what's an example?
Yeah, you come up with a hypothesis, yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna walk through the steps for.
I don't need you to walk through the steps. I know the steps. The point is, science is experimentation. You see an observation.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Let me finish talking. Okay. So, say a phone goes flying past my face. Just hypothetically, let's say that happens, and I say, "Oh, that happened." Okay. So, why did that happen? Well, I think that happened because a cannon shot the phone in front of my face. And so then what I do is I design some sort of experiment that might help me figure out if that's true or not. And I control for everything else. I get rid of everything. I get rid of the slingshot in the corner. I get rid of the other person that could have thrown it at me. I get rid of all of that. So only the cannon is there. And then if the phone goes past my face again, I conclude that because everything else was controlled for, the cannon caused the phone to go past my face. The cannon shot the phone. And then you need to substantiate that. You need to write it up. And then everyone else in the scientific community needs to replicate your experiment. And if they get the same results, then you conclude that you were correct in your hypothesis. And only then. So please tell me, did I do just an experiment, or did I do a couple of more things there?
You did an observation, and what was the science that you did? The experiment was the science. Other people doing it? Well, that was them doing science. It wasn't you doing science. But the point is, if they they're still doing science. The point is, it's experiment. The point is, the science is the experiment. You can go off and say, oh, observation, variable, this, variable, that. The point is, that's still part of the experiment. You can say, I've written up my experiment. The point is, it's still writing about the experiment because science
formulating,
is you can try and twist it any way you
making
want.
an observation, making an observation, designing an experiment, formulating a hypothesis. None of that is part of the experiment. None of that is part of the experiment. It is not just an experiment.
Some science doesn't even have experiments.
You see an observation, you do an experiment, you try and determine the cause of that experiment, and then that is science.
Sorry, did you just say determine the cause of the experiment? No.
The cause of the observation. So you see an observation, you do an experiment, and then you see what is the cause of that.
Actually, what you do is you see the observation, you form a hypothesis on the observation, and then you control for every other factor. So, in other words, I was talking!
I don't care!
Too bad!
Yeah, too bad. Done listening.
So, you disprove everything else in your experiment, and then you now have arrived at your answer. It is not you do. It is not that. Shut up. It is not that you.
Shut up.
No, because I was talking.
Rachie, when he's talking, just fucking listen and stop interrupting.
No, because all he's doing is saying he's experimenting. Well done. Oh, I've control for this IV. Oh, well done. You've still done experiment.
There's so much more to it than experiment. Some science doesn't even require experiment. Anyway, I would like to say hello to PhD Tony. One of my favourite people on the planet and someone I aspire to be half as smart as. Tony, thank you for coming on the channel. I do appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I'd like to clarify Rachie's request. I'd like to show some footage of the gravimeter that I helped maintain, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, Tony. I also think that Ranty's in here. Ranty, hello, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Hi, Ranty.
All right, let's have a look
at... I need you to enable screen sharing.
Yep, should be able for you now. My bad.
Okay, so this is the gravimeter. Can you see that?
Yep, we can all see that.
So this is the gravimeter that I helped maintain. It's a superconducting gravimeter. It's full of helium, and it's super cooled. It's maintained at a temperature of about 11 Kelvin.
Oh, I didn't realize we could get things that low.
This is actually quite old. You can get sort of down to fractions of Kelvin nowadays.
Wow.
But anyway, that's yeah. So that's just the video of that. You will notice that there's a bunch of electronics there off to the left. Those are not actually the instrument outputs. The instrument outputs are actually outside this room. This instrument is kept in a basement at the local astronaut. We have a school of astronomy. It's kept in the basement up on the mountain there. And just us being in the room with it is enough to completely disrupt the instrument. It is so sensitive that being near it and moving will disrupt the instrument readings. So it is physically impossible for me to move an item up and down near it and get a picture of the response in the main room, because the main room is about 5 yards from where I was. Even if I could get an instantaneous reading of what was going on, the fact that I'm there would be causing the machine to spaz out. Basically, we have to go in, do our maintenance, and then we have to leave it there alone and be nowhere near it, because our presence is enough to disrupt it. So I help maintain it. I have access to it, but I'm not in charge of this project. It's not my gravimeter, and it is not at liberty to be used for stupid YouTube demonstrations to make up for the fact that somebody else can't be bothered to learn basic high school science. That's not what it's for. I don't get to disrupt its scientific application just to make you happy, Rachie. So, no, I couldn't do what you asked, but there are very good reasons why I couldn't do what you asked. So how about you find somebody with access to a less sensitive gravimeter and ask them? And instead of spreading lies about whether or not I have access to a gravimeter or whether or not I can demonstrate gravity, I've published 3 papers in the past 2 months on Earth's gravitational field. And I'll thank you very much not to go casting what are basically fucking lies about me and my colleagues. I can't do the demonstration that you want. It's a stupid demonstration anyway. This instrument is far too sensitive for that sort of thing to pull off. So pull your head in and learn how to read. You know why you can't find YouTube videos about science? Not that you believe YouTube videos about science. Blue Marble Science did an extensive YouTube demonstration of his Cavendish experiment, and you called him a liar and a fraud to his face.
Yep.
Right? No, I didn't know who's lying.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, you did. You called it a parlor trick.
Show me where I said he was a liar and a fraud.
You did.
Next video, I expect you to show a screenshot or whatever saying that I said he was a liar and a fraud. That's not what
I can do that. I can do that, Rachie. I can do that because you told me personally how.
I told you it was a parlor experiment.
Yeah. So you are calling him a liar. So you are calling him a liar. You are calling him a liar. You are calling him a liar.
All you do is fucking lie.
That is you calling him a liar and a fraud. You're accusing him of a magic trick.
You and Tony are complete and utter liars. Tony's lying about what I said. I said it was a parlor trick. That's not me calling somebody a fraud and a liar.
Yes, it is. You're calling him a fraud, saying he's doing a parlor trick. You're saying he's lying.
Calm down.
A parlor trick does not mean that.
Yes, it does.
Calm down. Calm down.
No, it doesn't.
Calm down.
Yes,
calm down.
Right,
Rachie. Hold on, please.
Okay.
Rachie, saying that a scientific demonstration or an experiment or anything like that is nothing, and I'm paraphrasing, these are not your exact words, I don't think, I haven't seen the video or anything, but if you're saying that it is nothing more than a parlor trick, you are essentially saying that their results are invalid, that they haven't done the proper science, whatever it is that you mean by that, and that is in essence calling him a fraud. I'm not saying no.
What I mean by that? Why don't you ask me what did you mean by that, Rachie, when you says, "Oh, it's a parlor trick"? Instead of putting words in my mouth, why don't you ask me?
Interrupting me. Okay, then what did you mean?
All right. Let's ask you now, Rachie. What did you mean by Blue Marble's Cavendish experiment being a parlor trick?
Basically, what I meant is, for all we know, the way that it's set up, the way that it's hanging and pulling on the like the tension and that, it could make it swing somewhere. It doesn't necessarily mean Blue Marble knows the reason why it's swinging, knows the fact that it might be a parlor trick. It doesn't necessarily mean that he knows that it's a parlor trick. What it means is that there's something, and obviously I can't finish because PhD Tony can't keep his mouth shut.
That's so much better. That's so much better. You're just accusing him of grotesque ineptitude. And me. So you're not accusing us of being liars. We're either liars or we're grossly inept. As opposed to the reality,
because you can't even understand the word I'm saying.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Keep putting words in my mouth, Tony. Keep lying.
Rachie, let me ask you a simple question then, right? Did Blue Marble's Cavendish experiment demonstrate an attraction between the masses in the experiment, yes or no?
Who knows? Because all we done was saw a light move across the thing. We don't know what it actually showed, do we?
So you will reject any evidence. It wouldn't
Call him a liar.
It wouldn't matter if we had footage. It wouldn't matter. Sorry, I just want to finish this thought. It wouldn't matter if we had footage of somebody operating a gravimeter on a submarine, right? It wouldn't matter if we had that. It wouldn't matter if we were standing on a submarine. I'm still speaking.
Yeah, well, you like to interrupt me.
Rachie, please.
Standing on a submarine. It wouldn't matter if you were standing on a submarine watching what was happening. You would still reject that evidence because anything that doesn't agree with what you want to believe could be a fraud. You'll accuse anybody of fraud, anybody of incompetence.
Yeah, whatever.
Oh,
Finish.
Ranty's just left. I was about to ask him something.
Right.
Yeah, so
I'm just
basically,
going to talk about what I originally came here to talk about, which is, Rachie, you insist on seeing a demonstration, whatever that means. Maybe you mean a video or you know, seeing it in person.
a
You
YouTube
want to
video
see a
from
demonstration
Eric or something
of the gravimeter doing what we say it does. So what I need to ask you then is, and this is unrelated, so don't freak out, but do you watch the news? Do you watch the weather on the news?
No.
You don't? Okay, well that makes this difficult. You are aware of what the Weather Channel does, though, right?
No. Yeah.
You don't know what the Weather Channel does?
I'm joking.
Okay.
Yeah, of course I do. The
Right.
weather.
So they tell you that this is what we expect to see, and you know, usually it's the case that we see what they tell us, and you know this, right? Like,
I don't know. I don't watch the
actually,
weather.
you don't. You don't watch the weather, but I can assure you that at least 50% of the time the weather is pretty accurate, right? So
no, you can guess it here anyway. Cloudy and rain. There you go. Done pretty much every day. Yay!
right. Well, if they say we expect to say rain tomorrow, and we see rain tomorrow, would you say that that is the weather being right?
You could say that pretty much every day and it'd be right.
But about tomorrow?
Yeah, pretty much every day you could say it's going to rain and you'd pretty much be right.
Okay, but if they say it's going to rain and it does, and if they say it's not going to rain and it doesn't, you think they just get right by luck, or what?
Well, no, obviously they know weather systems and pressure systems and that, don't they?
Right, so weather systems and pressure systems, so you accept that they're using that to make their prediction, yeah?
No, except they're using weather balloons with devices on that can show them different pressures in different areas and things, and then obviously...
Sure, we'll go with that. So why do you need to see a demonstration of the gravimeter working, but you don't need to see a demonstration of the weather balloon doing what it does, or how they make those predictions based on what the weather balloon shows?
Fair question, but one, I don't care about the weather. Two, I do care about
I know
the
you don't, and I told you that this is a tangent. I'm
Yeah,
asking why
I'm just
you
saying.
need a demonstration for this specific thing that we're talking about, but you don't need a demonstration for anything else.
Because one, I'm not looking into the weather. Two, I am looking into gravity. So three, I'm asking for a demonstration of it because I want to know how accurate it is. So if I can see several times repeated in the same location and it's, you know, accurate several times in that same location, in that same spot, then when you move it to another spot, then I can know when it has a change in that accuracy, when it has a change in the reading, in the measurement, that actually that is an accurate reading because it was accurate over here and I did it several times and it gave you the same reading. So then if you move it to a different location and it gave you a different reading, then I know it was accurate before. So therefore I know it definitely changed in a different place.
So
I have a tangential question. There exist companies that sell gravimeters. Do you accept that gravimeters are useful, or do you think that these companies are somehow, you know, why do these companies exist if gravimeters aren't useful?
That is a good question, actually.
Well, you want me to tell you why it's hard for you to answer? Because if you say that they just exist to funnel money into them, you now have to prove where that money's going. You have to prove that that's actually occurring. You have to prove that they're not using these gravimeters for what they say they're using. It opens up a lot of problems for you if you say anything other than they exist because they do what we say they do.
I'm not saying they don't. I just said I'd like a demonstration, but yeah, that is a good point. Like if they're selling them, then obviously.
Well, what do you think? So I showed a picture of a superconducting gravimeter. That's not a cheap piece of kit, right? That's very expensive. It takes a lot to maintain it and keep it operating. You know, we didn't get it for free, and the university pays for its maintenance, and people pay for its results because it produces scientifically useful output. Similarly, there exist companies whose sole purpose is to run gravimetric surveys. That's the only service they provide, is geophysical analysis of gravity data. If gravity is useless, why do these companies exist? You know, so you've got to explain why these instruments are built. I can show you, you know, the Lacoste FG5X is a commercially produced gravimeter. If you've got enough money, you can go out and buy one. There are a bunch of cheaper gravimeters that you can buy, but the FG5X is one of the most accurate absolute gravimeters out there. You can go out, you can buy one, you can set it up in your own backyard if you want. No, I wouldn't recommend it. You need specially conditioned sites that are stable and everything like that. But if you wanted to, you could. These companies exist, and they continue to exist, producing scientific equipment for the sole purpose of precisely measuring gravitational variations. They sell. Craig earlier produced the example of gravity gradiometers on submarines, and this technology was private, but now it's public, and people are using it for mineral surveys. You can see the mining companies, and they will publish their results. They will produce gravity maps of the regions that they've studied, and they will identify places where there's more likely to be an oil or a natural gas deposit. Because it's got lower gravity than other regions around. This technology is used quite often, and there's a lot of commerce around it. Why is there money being spent on this? Why do these companies exist? Why does this happen? If, as you say, gravity isn't real.
Well, the only answer I've got to say is, maybe it changes in certain locations, and they need to know the change. But I don't see why they would even need to know the change, to be honest. I mean, it doesn't change by that much, so.
Well,
I don't know.
I mean,
I ain't got an answer to that.
So my explanation would be that we can use variations in gravitational acceleration to constrain the distribution of mass nearby. So we can locate underwater mountains. We can locate underground deposits of minerals, including water. We can identify groundwater using gravity measurements. We can identify changes in mass sheet, the mass of ice sheets.
Within what kind of margin of error are you able to do that? Like, how accurate is it?
So, I mean, we can easily, the units we measure in are millimeters of equivalent water height over mass concentrations that are about 200 kilometers on a side. So that's 1 millimeter times 200,000 times 200,000. So that would be
Jesus.
200.
Very accurate then.
That's quite accurate, but we can do that sort of analysis, and that's what I'm being paid to do at the moment. And if this is all useless, why do I get paid?
Tony, if you were to give a demonstration to Rachie, if you were to get in that room and then say, Rachie, I'll do anything you want me to do to demonstrate it, presumably you'll just end up showing her a number on a monitor that she'd then have to be able to understand, have it explained to her slowly. It would be absolutely useless to show her a demonstration of this at all. And that's why we write papers, to summarize it in a clear way to people and document it.
Yep.
And the idea that Rachie seems to have, that all experiments have to be all ready to go this second, every experiment she's ever interested in, there has to be someone hovering over a machine to demonstrate it to her, is insane. In science, we document things, so we don't have to keep all the kit occupying all the laboratories around the world. We do it once, we document it, other people test it, verify it, check it in other institutions. They then agree, everybody seems to get the same results. They then write that down and they present it in English in a nice, digestible fashion in a couple of pages, so that you don't have to spend 10 hours watching a video and have PhD Tony explain to you how a machine works.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I will defend Rachie a little bit here in the case that you do need to make care, and science has gotten a little bit sloppy about this, to make sure that what you're writing about is completely reproducible. There have been problems with code, with people not sharing their code, not sharing their data sets. So we have had some problems with reproducibility, and we have had some people in scientific literature, not in my field, but in other fields, who have just blatantly fabricated their results. So there is room for caution. There is room for,
that's peer review, isn't it?
Well, these frauds got through this particular fraud I'm thinking of, Hendrik Schahn. He got through peer review multiple times.
But not eventually. But he got caught in the end by...
Yeah, he got caught. He got caught eventually. But one of the problems with peer review is that it isn't set up to consider the idea that a scientist is actually just bullshitting, right? That's not the first go-to. People tend to say, oh, well, he made a mistake. He's overlooked this. He needs to refine that. And as long as they do all these things, the reviewers are generally happy. But science is not a perfect mechanism, but peer review is the best way we've got of advantage. And as you say, you document everything, you write it all down so it's fixed, it's inflexible, it's immovable, it's right there in black and white, and anybody can go and read it.
And then, of course, by documenting it, you then give the opportunity for someone else to come along and reproduce this and invalidate it. Because, of course, someone can, and then say, sorry, that document you produced was bollocks. And it's not people like Rachie just wandering around. There are people who've got their careers in trying to invalidate everybody else's papers. They're trying to make a career and a name and a Nobel Prize. If they could invalidate the sorts of things that Tony's doing and saying, you've got your whole physics wrong, it doesn't work, it works in this different way, they'd be on for a Nobel Prize. It's in the interest of science to invalidate the previous work, and people bang their heads for years and careers trying to do exactly that. And also, earlier on, we were talking... So, quickly on another point. Rachie, you were saying that science is just experimentation. Science, you actually quoted it correctly, as I believe is a good definition, of science is the study of the physical and natural world, and you do that through observation and experiment. There's some parts of science that are just pure observation. So, for instance, the structure of a tree, your bodily functions, the heart, the mass of a proton, the stars in the sky, where they are and how they move. These are just pure observations. There's no experimentation involved. Pure observation, and that is science. The mass of a proton, determining it accurately, is science. People have careers in science and publishing it in scientific journals what the mass of a proton is. We've had recent discoveries about what is, or the mass of an electron, mass diffusion, how atoms, pictures of atoms. These are just observational stuff. There's no experimentation. There's no wiggling some independent variable. You're just trying to find some way, although you do indirectly have to wiggle things, but you're not doing it to get an effect of the electron or the mass to change an electron. You're just trying to observe things, and that is a fundamental part of science. In fact, I would say it was the majority of science is making observations of things and documenting them. Finished.
And I just want to welcome the Rumpus as well, in case people don't know who this is. Rumpus is a crazy guy.
You did notice the guy that was going on and on and on.
Yeah.
That's the Rumpus.
Sorry, I do get into a groove there.
Yeah. Thank you for joining, Rumpus. I do appreciate it. How you doing, bud?
My pleasure. Thanks, Craig, for letting me in.
Rachie, is
I think Rachie, I mean, although she's being a bit, she did talk about a parlor, by the way, I mean, I do believe that Rachie's a bit more intelligent than your average flatty. Just the way she's making arguments, although she's wrong, obviously, she is actually making much more intelligent arguments than your average flatty. And but I'm a little bit disappointed. She said she doesn't seem to recognise it. When she said something's a parlor trick, that implies that someone is trying to trick you. In other words, to misrepresent what's going on. It's not an honest. So when you call Blue Marble Science's Cavendish experiment a parlor trick, that implies that he's doing something to trick you that is not really happening. That's what a parlor trick is. You know, deceiving you about some cards or something. So therefore you are implying that he's doing a trick, not doing a piece of science.
Correct, but what I'm saying is he's took that off somebody else, Cavendish. What, for all we know, Cavendish could have been the parlor trick, you know what I mean? He set it all up as a parlor trick, and then all he's doing is repeating it, and in which case he's repeating a parlor trick without knowing it's a parlor trick.
Right,
doesn't
so you
mean
think
it's
But
okay.
if you repeat, like we just explained, part of science is redoing or reproducing the results of someone else's experiment. You are meant to take it from someone else, do it yourself, and if you get the same results, that validates the experiment. Now obviously you need more than one person to reproduce it. You need, you know, a lot of people. I can't put a number on it, but you need quite a few people to do this, because every single time that you get the same or extremely similar results, every single time that happens, it gets more and more and more accurate.
And the fact that two people in this community, Blue Marble Science and BM Furball, both built their own Cavendish experiment, very different setups as well, from scratch, and they both managed to derive the gravitational constant themselves accurately. They got the same thing, and their experiments contain different materials, very different setups, different sizes. I think Blue Marbles was slightly more accurate than BM Furball's was, but the entire way that both the experiments were designed was very, very different. So, if this was just a parlor trick that Cavendish came up with, the fact that you can kind of change bits and bobs of the experiment with it still being fundamentally the same goes against that, right?
Have you got a link to that other person's?
That's to you, Rachie. The fact that in this community we've had two people build their own Cavendishes, very different designs, different materials, and still get the same result. Doesn't that debunk your parlor trick theory?
Well, no. Well, it's done it a different way, maybe, but I haven't seen the other one.
But you've not seen BM Furball's?
I don't even know who that is.
He built one in an apartment in Korea, I believe, and he had a very elaborate vibration dampening setup going on, and he had it in an enclosed box with some paper towels hanging down to show there was no air or anything in there, and he basically got the same results that Blue Marble got, but it was a very, very different setup using very different materials. I'll link you all the stuff for that. Just make sure you're
There is a department, I think it's in Boston University or something, that's dedicated to measuring G by doing more modern versions of the Cavendish experiment, where they've got, I can't remember, is it 12 or 16 lead balls or gold balls even in a vacuum, in which they do it in a different mechanism. So if it was a parlor trick, in other words, they were measuring something that's not really happening. We've had this experiment reproduced on numerous occasions by numerous people in numerous institutions over hundreds of years, and they've all come to the conclusion that it's a genuine thing. If it was some sort of trick, this would have been determined, as though, you're implying that Cavendish has come up with some... The actual mechanism is actually quite simple. It's very difficult, unless you've got some sort of electromagnets or something. You're thinking he's stuffed some magnets underneath these things. But these other people haven't done that. He documented what he did, and people have reproduced, like Blue was very rigorous in following the structure of the Cavendish thing. He deliberately followed it as closely as he could. But other people have done it in completely different ways. As I say, there's an institution that does this using much more advanced techniques, much more advanced engineering, and they've come to exactly the same results. Everybody who's done this properly comes up with the same result using different mechanisms. It is being peer-reviewed, repeated, and verified.
Let me just put it in a simpler analogy.
Sorry, if I could just quickly, before you that, I wanted to just back up what Rumpus was saying there. It's been done in so many different ways. It was last year they did the smallest Cavendish experiment ever, and they measured the gravitational field between two 90-milligram spheres of gold. That's tiny, but it's the same fundamental experiment, but they're able to do it with completely different pieces of material, completely different setup. In this case, something so small that you could fit millions of them in your hand, and they still managed to get the same result.
Do they use a torsional bar to measure the force in that one, or do they use a different mechanism?
No, they use a different mechanism.
Right, there you go.
They measure the stress in the sort of the arms that are supporting the balls. On my channel, I've got a video that has 22 different peer-reviewed experiments investigating the Newtonian law of gravity at different length scales in different environments using different experimental setups. It's not the case that we just looked at Cavendish and said, yeah, okay, that's acceptable. We tried experimenting it. Does it still hold if the bodies are accelerating? Are there other techniques for measuring it? Is it different over different scales? How far into the sort of near quantum realm can you extend this? And we've got it down to, I think, 10 to the minus, I think we've got it down to nanometer scale, that the inverse square law holds at nanometer scale, or certainly very close to it. So it's not the case that, as is often presented, that people just haven't taken an interest in testing the fundamental principles of the laws of gravity. No, there have been many experiments and observations designed to test this. And if you want to test it yourself, if you want to see it, then I'm afraid you're going to have to go and do it yourself.
Yeah, and as we've shown, that can be done.
In fact, that experiment you've just cited, Craig, is actually, it was an attempt to see if the inverse square law of gravitation actually did go down to the small scales that Tony was talking about. It was an attempt to invalidate the orthodoxy of Newton's theory of universal gravitation. It was an attempt to validate it, and they found, no, it's exact. In fact, they were rather disappointed, the experimenters, that it did was consistent with Newton's law.
And it also did a lot of the things that flat earthers always ask for. It was done in a vacuum chamber, and it had a Faraday shield between the test masses, so there was no electromagnetic interference, there was no air currents. It was literally in a vacuum chamber, and even on such a small scale, it validated that Fg equals gm1m2 over r squared. And now, okay, so Draco, I interrupted you. You were about to say something. I apologize. Back to you.
So, I these are all great explanations, obviously. But I feel like, and I'm not going to speak for Rachie, but I feel like that this might be a little bit complex for her to understand this kind of thing. So I'm trying to make it a little... Rachie, are you here, by the way? You haven't said anything in a while.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. So imagine, so you on the point of parlor trick, imagine that you attend a magic show. You see a magician pull a rabbit out of a hat. That's a parlor trick. Now you take the same hat, his hat, that exact hat he used, you reach in, no rabbit comes out. Why? Because it was a trick. There was a specific setup that he had to do to get that apparent effect to occur. Now, if that was the case in the Cavendish experiment, if it was a trick that the original, that Cavendish himself set up, as soon as the second person tried it, it would fail because we didn't have the setup for the trick to work. Do you understand?
Yeah, if he's going the same, they're doing it the actual same, but it don't matter anyway because somebody says they're doing it different, so...
Sorry, what?
I said it's not if he's copied it exactly the same and part of the parlor trick is within the design, but obviously they said they designed it different and done it differently, so it don't really matter anyway.
I mean, in that case, then Cavendish himself, for some inexplicable reason, made a fake experiment and then published the exact way to do his fake trick experiment for everyone else to copy. Why would you do that? A magician doesn't copy or doesn't tell everyone exactly how to do their trick.
And
why would you do that?
And a little about Cavendish. Cavendish, he was far too socially inept to trick people, right? If Cavendish was alive today, he would have clearly been diagnosed with somewhere on the autism spectrum disorder, possibly something like Asperger's or something. He was so methodical, so single-minded in his entire life, in everything that he did, because he clearly had, something wrong that would have been treatable nowadays. He was definitely on the autism spectrum disorder level, and that led him to be as methodical and basically batshit crazy as he was. Like he literally couldn't be around people, so much so that he had a separate staircase built into his house so that he didn't have to be anywhere near the staff or other members of the household. Cavendish simply wasn't the kind of person that I think could have had the social ability to trick a bunch. But
it's irrelevant anyway what he did. Yeah, if Cavendish never existed, we would still have all the other experiments that have happened subsequent to that show that gravity exists and what the value of big G is.
Okay. Well, the point.
I think Tony wanted to say something. So, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. The point that I would make to Rachie is that if you are under the impression, if you want us to accept that the Cavendish experiment is a parlor trick and has been set up to produce that result, you have to demonstrate that. You have to prove it, because nobody else has demonstrated that that's a parlor trick. And you're making a claim that it's a parlor trick. You need to prove it. Nobody else can see how it's done. If you think it's a parlor trick, show us, okay? And if you can't show us, abandon your claim. You've got no evidence for it.
Rachie, do you accept the weight of evidence from all these different people over hundreds of years who've reproduced this in different ways to produce exactly the same result? You've gone a bit quiet on us, Rachie. So I'll just repeat the question.
She's
accept
it herself?
I know. I'll repeat the question away from the microphone. So, Rachie, do you accept that over hundreds of years this experiment has been repeated in many, many different ways and verified and checked by many different institutions in different countries around the world, and they've all come to the very, very similar answer within the sort of margin of error of experimentation? Do you accept that?
Are you there, Rachie?
She's obviously gone off. Oh no,
she's here. She's here. Let her answer. Do you accept that, Rachie?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I said that apparently, yeah, they've been doing it over the last hundreds of years, and apparently they've been getting roughly similar results. But that's what you read about and what you hear about. You don't actually know that, do you?
We don't know what.
Well, hold on.
I don't know personally.
Well, hold on, Drake. I asked a question. Drake, I asked a question. So, Rachie, are you saying then that these people who've reproduced the results and documented them as you would have to do, that they're somehow making this up, or then what are you implying?
Nothing. I'm just saying I don't know for a fact. You know what I mean? Like.
But what would be a fact for you? What more could they do? What more could we do for you than in history over the last 100 years besides write down what they've done and for it to be reduced in the modern day and to be an institution in Boston University that does this every single day using the most modern up-to-date engineering solutions to the problem? And they keep on trying to get a better value for G every, as I understand it, every day. It's what this institution, the Department of Boston University, I think it is, somewhere in that state, does. What more can we do for you? What more do you want?
All I wanted was the gravimeter, just to like.
No. We're talking about Cavendish at the moment. We'll go back to gravimeter in a second.
Yeah, which is still about gravity. With Cavendish, like, I don't know, without the boxing around it and stuff, and several times and repeated and that. But
well, that's what we've done. It's been repeated, it's been documented, it's been peer reviewed, it's been checked, and no one has ever been able to find a very different result, or that these experiments are invalid. If they had, if someone was able to invalidate those experiments and that result for big G, they would have a Nobel Prize. There's an incentive to do this. Indeed, the experiment that Craig brought up was people trying to invalidate the inverse square law over very small distances and sizes, as PhD Tony pointed out. And they didn't. They found out that, in fact, it agrees with the standard model, the Newtonian model. What more can we do for you?
In that regard, nothing.
Right, great. So in which case then, we've satisfied all the reasonable requests, and we've shown, therefore, that it's as true as anything can be in this real world. If we accept that we're living in a real world, we're not in a simulation, we're not brains in a vat. If we believe that reality is what we see and perceive, then that's as good as we ever going to get to prove anything. Yet you seem to be rejecting it. Well, actually, I think this is why you're a bit more intent. You seem to be accepting it now. So I think although you're being a bit obstreperous with Craig, I think deep down you're actually a logical creature that's just not been well educated. And you seem to be accepting it now, so good.
Can I? Well, I'm going to ask you a question, Rumpus, and then I'm going to go around the room, and I'll end up with Rachie. If you see, media coverage of some new scientific development, do you insist that the people who have done it come around and do it for you in your lounge room?
Do I have to really answer that sensibly? I might give a joke answer to that. Okay. I think you know what my answer is going to be. I think
this seems to be the fundamental dichotomy in opinion, right? is that I think that Draco, Craig, myself, yourself would all say, no, science is under no obligation to do that.
I kept asking Elon to bring his rockets round.
Is to actually read the paper.
I've got to respond to that. This is the classic thing, a line that I've used about flatters all the time. They don't believe anything, it seems to me, unless it's happened in their bedroom underneath their bed. The trouble is they spend most of their time underneath their bed looking at the bottom of their bed and therefore refusing to accept anything that happens outside this environment. They don't understand this idea of peer review and checking, and that we reasonable people, they're prepared to accept the professionals who spend their entire life doing and checked by other professionals and other institutions are going to end up with the right answer. We believe, we say these people have authority, they have the right to say, and we're prepared to give them that belief that they have earned that credibility. We don't have to sit in our bedroom to witness it.
Exactly, and I think that's the fundamental problem that Rachie is unable to accept at the moment. Is science is under no obligation to come into your lounge room and explain stuff to you, demonstrate stuff to you, or prove it to you. It is of no consequence to science if you choose not to believe what science is doing. Science doesn't care, right? And you can imagine that your opinion outweighs the peer-reviewed literature. You can imagine that you're some special person whose belief in science needs to be buttressed by these demonstrations under circumstances you get to dictate. But it's false. You're just not that important. I'm not that important. Rumpus isn't that important. Nope. Craig isn't that important. And Draco isn't that important.
Wait,
None of us are so important. I'm sorry to break it to you, Craig, but that's just how it is.
But my wife tells me I'm important.
Well, yeah, she's probably prepared to do science experiments for you, but the rest of science, demonstrably not. So, it's just I have an undergraduate degree, I have a PhD, I have many years in my field, but when an epidemiologist stands up and says, this is what we need to do to combat a pandemic, I don't say, well, you need to prove that to me. I accept that the epidemiologist knows what they're talking about. So I do what the epidemiologist says. Because if we all start, choosing which science we're going to accept, even though we've got no expertise in those disciplines, society's not going to work. Science is not going to get anywhere. I don't think, Rachie, you're going to get anywhere if you insist on personally experiencing all of the breakthroughs of science.
The key thing, I think, Tony, is that epidemiology you were talking about has been peer-reviewed and has earned the respect of people in that field. Exactly. That's the key point.
Okay, yeah, and that's...
Okay.
And that's the point that I would make.
It's time to start wrapping up. MC Toon is live, and I still need to read Super Chats. And I kind of want to finish with my thoughts on what's going on with you, Rachie.
So shall I back out?
You're welcome to stay for the Super Chats and stuff if you like.
Okay.
Obviously, everyone is. But I do need to start wrapping up because I've gone over Toon's time and I feel bad.
I'm off to bed, so. Craig. Thanks very much.
Well, thanks for joining, Rumpus. I do appreciate it. Always.
My pleasure, Rumpus.
So, Rachie, I feel like you're close, right? I feel like you're close to realizing that you've been lied to by a bunch of morons. But there's something that is holding you back, and I don't know if it's ego. I don't know if it's a need to be special. I don't know if it's attention, or I genuinely don't know if it's uncertainty on your part, but something is holding you back. You are very close to breaking that brainwashing that has been forced on you by a bunch of idiots. And I want you to understand why some people in this community have got angry at you with the way you've acted, and why I personally feel like you've been unfair to some people like PhD Tony. Whether you realize it or not, the things that you say imply that we are all lying, especially someone like Tony who does this for a living. Whether you realize it or not, whether you mean it or not, you are calling Blue Marble Science and BM Furble liars. You are calling people that have spent their life studying and working hard to know what they know liars. And that isn't nice. And, that is where the hostility from our side comes from. Do you understand that? You still there?
You've muted yourself, Rachie.
Yeah, but I'm not calling them liars.
Just like I said, whether you realize it or not, you are, because of the things that you are saying, because of implying that gravity isn't a thing. Indirectly, whether you mean it or not, you're calling PhD Tony a liar. When you say that he can't prove the things that he's saying, whether you mean to or not, you are calling him a liar, and you're calling all the people that have spent their life doing this liars. And that's where the hostility on our side comes from. Like, do you understand that?
No, because I'm not calling him a liar. All I'm saying is that...
Rachie, let me try and elucidate it. It's not that you are saying the words, you are a liar, but because of some of the things you say, it makes us feel like you're calling us liars. Does that make more sense? So what you're saying is you're
getting offended because you're taking offense?
Maybe not
meant
me.
To take offense.
Maybe
not
you
me. Personally, but you know.
But there's some reason why we should take offense.
People that have spent their lives doing this, doing scientific endeavors, for you to in any way, even in the smallest bit, doubt their expertise on the subject will, and they should, and it will offend them because they've spent their life on this. How would you feel if if you trained your whole life to do something and I just said, oh well, you don't know what you're talking about? I know I'd feel a bit hurt. Yeah. I'm sure you would, and that's what's happening here. Do you understand?
Yeah, but I probably wouldn't care. I'd probably just laugh at them, to be honest.
That's not
right. Well, that's
when we're trying
choice.
To help you. That's the thing, Rachie. Right? Okay, so Rachie, I want there's going to be two outcomes to this whole stream. Outcome one is that you denounce the flat Earth, and you apologize to the people that you indirectly called a liar. Outcome two is that you are literally now the queen of the Flerfs, and it's up to you how this goes. We want to help you, and if you want to be a Glober, we will all welcome you into this community with open arms and help you understand the things that you still have struggling with understanding. We will be there for you. We will back you if you want to start a channel, explaining from your point of view. But you need to realize that you're wrong. The Earth is not flat. Gravity is real, empirically shown to be real, and whether you mean it or not, you have offended people, you have called people liars, and that is something that a decent person would rectify. When I'm wrong, I say sorry, whether I meant to be wrong or not. If I'm wrong, I say sorry, and that needs to be one of the part of the outcome. If you realize that you're wrong, you need to say sorry. Is that fair?
You're muted.
You may have muted yourself again. I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, I want you to have a think about it. All right, really have a think about it, please.
I'd like to say something.
Please, Tony, do.
Rachie, you've been given the equivalent of many thousands of pounds of individual tuition from myself, Professor Phil Bell, Clive Wells, and a couple of other people. We've taken the time to explain stuff to you. We've given you gifts, and they were unconditional. And you have responded to those gifts with hostility and skepticism and barely failed claims that I'm a liar and a fraud, as is my entire discipline. And I don't appreciate it. And I'm not going to be disrespected like this. It's up to you whether or not, you can either say, well, I didn't mean to offend you. I'm sorry that I did. Or you can refuse, and that's fine. But refusing basically draws a line under this, because then you're simply not a worthwhile human being. You're not even nice at that point, because a nice person would apologize for that. After having been given a gift freely and free of charge, that is worth, that has great deal of material worth, you've not only scorned that gift, you've gone on to insult the gift givers. And, you know, I can't speak for all of them, but I'm certainly going to speak for myself. I'm not going to be treated like this. So either grow a backbone, become an adult, and take responsibility for what you said and did, or don't, and see how you get treated.
Okay, so I said and did. What did I say and do? I asked for an experiment. You couldn't
bring
provide
this
one.
up again.
Therefore, I called you a liar family. I'm sorry you got offended by that. I'm sorry people have to interrupt me while I'm talking as well. I'm sorry, PhD Tony, that you got offended and took offence that I asked you for an experiment that you couldn't prove, and therefore I said I asked you for an experiment and you couldn't do it, and therefore for some reason you took offence to that. Sorry.
Okay, that was the most insincere and dickish utterance I've heard in a long time.
Yeah,
and I think you just answered us, Rachie. I think you just answered us. Well done. You've taken, you know, there was a point there where you were beginning to win us back. There was a point there where we were thinking that you were capable of reasonableness. I'm still speaking.
I couldn't care less. You
ignorant
yes,
okay, right.
Shut
up. Okay.
Shut up.
All right, right.
Shut up.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Calm down.
All right. Let's all stop now. All right. It's obviously Rachie. We've opened our arms to you, and we are here. We want to help you, but if you want to throw that back in our faces, that is totally your choice. All right.
It's not that FTFE. He basically saying, oh, we've helped you, blah, blah, blah. One, I never asked for your help. Two, I never asked for your time.
Well, then
Three,
you should be even more grateful for it.
Hold on. Three, what did you do? You apparently helped me, yeah? What did you expect in return, exactly? You don't help people expecting things in return. Number four. Number five, you called me a liar and said that I said this and that when I didn't. And number five, if you took offence, then that's your problem.
No, it's not his problem. That's not how it works. Right, okay.
Wanted you not to waste your existence in wallowing in pathetic ignorance. That's what I wanted.
Yeah, we wanted to help you, Rachie, and you know we didn't want anything out of it apart from you realizing that you've been wrong and to fucking help you. But you've thrown that back in all of our faces. So anyway, I am going to read the super chats before this goes on further. So if I can go over and watch MC Toon. My apologies to Toon for running over. Tony, I thank you for your incredible amount of patience and awesome expertise for trying to help all the time. You know, I've learned so much from you, and I just wish Rachie could take that as well. Rachie, I'm sorry that you can't be an adult. I really am. Alison for $5 Australian says, Rachie, navigation debunks the flat earth. You know this. Abandon your brain dead cult. DL1, new member. Pronoun 1990's been a member for 2 months. Please, girl, get out of flat earth. It's not worth it. DL1, $5. It is possible to say he is right after Lemon Bird if you're from the 90s and follow it up with not. Waikika Moo Cow, member for 13 months, says, is it just me or is Rachie starting to sound more and more like Mallory? It's smushing. Hashtag boop. Mallory's smarter, unfortunately. Lord Luminous Poo for $5 at work. My 3-year anniversary cookies arrived a week after I turned in my 2 weeks. Awkward. And another one for Lord Luminous Poo. As always, if a triangle has sides 1, 1, and 1, how many sides does the triangle have? Yeah, never mind. DL1 for $2. The light is linear, not the ground. Yeah, I tried to explain that. Anamari Dew for $5. Movie Vertigo has demonstrated the globe to the horizon. That's all you need. Horizon and Polaris. Tim Tully for $5. The unfortunate thing is Rachie doesn't believe you're telling the truth and automatically discards what you say. Brainwashing. That's what's happened. D-Vibe Sui Sagtand for 56. Keep up the good work. Here's 50 Swedish krona to help you keep smacking the top left stupidity down. The Snark for 5 years. Good work, FTFE. It's not your fault. This is not working. It's Rachie who cannot do anything in 3D. Beach8's been a member for 25 months. Says, this is an egg and the counter is wrong. It should be 30 months. I don't know why it only says 25. I'm sorry. Lord Luminous Poo for $5. Using the mass of the ass and the angle of the dangle, calculate the measure of the pleasure. That's forbidden maths. Masturbator for 25 months says YouTube sucks. No, it doesn't. I love YouTube. They can hear me. They won't pay me if I'm mean. Almarju for $2. Predict supermoons using flat earth factors. She can't. It's impossible. Neil Palfyman for $5. Rachie, you have brains, you have beauty. Drop the denial and you have a date. Winky face. Mate, I wouldn't wish that on you, don't worry. Pronan1990 for $4.99 says flat is evil. Even mermaids know it's the most stupid. Pronan1990 for $1.99. Sleeping Warrior and Lemon Bird are evil. Get out. Sleeping Warrior is definitely fucking evil. Child predator that he is. DL1 for $5. FTFE supplied the evidence. If Rachie thinks the evidence is sus, then burden the proof is up to her to prove the evidence is sus. Yes, absolutely. Norman Dixon for $10. The Smithsonian Museum used to have a pendulum in its lobby and pegs centered on the pivot point. The pendulum would knock down all the pegs over time. I've seen it. I know, it's brilliant, but Rachie denies it's real because it's got a magnet in. Dave Rogers for $5 says, Rachie, I hope you have an open mind and will enough to go do the experiments for yourself. No, it's got to be done for her, in front of her, apparently. Mr. E-Man for $5. There is no flat Earth map and no explanation of the equatorial mount from a flat Earth. Absolutely not. DL1 for $2. I never understood Einstein until watching FTFE. Oh, don't trust me on Einstein. I get wrong about Einstein because, you know, I'm not... I only did bachelors of physics, but I've had to learn what I've learned about Einstein from people that are smarter than me. So if you really want to learn about Einstein, then please head that direction in education. String News 1 for $5. Learning is the necessary antecedent to knowledge, Rachie. Yes, hence top left. Lord of Luminous Poo for $5. Electricity is the source light. Is the result. Gravity is the source. Force is the result. What? Norman Dixon for $10. When designing bridges, we calculate the tension and compression of each member based on the force loads by using Newtonian physics. We calculate the forces acting on the bridge using Newtonian physics. Yeah, like I said, you want to build a bridge, you got to use Newton. Lord of Luminous Poof, $5. Rachie, Newton said this is what is happening, and Einstein came behind him and said this is why it is happening. She's never going to get it. Luke Firewalker, €5. There's a sensor in every modern smartphone which measures gravity to get the orientation of the phone. Yep. Pentalica for $5. Why show you a video when you call it a parlor trick? Fuck's sake. Neil Pafferman's been a member for 5 months, says Rachie, demonstration doesn't mean a YouTube video. And then Stringer News 1, been a member for 25 months, says I could have sworn it was longer. I don't know what that's in reference to, but yeah. Teddy for $10 Australian, round and round we go. I know. Luke Firewalker for €10. I once programmed a small industry level robot. I couldn't show this to Rachie because they're in the factory. So according to Rachie, I didn't do it. String News 1 for $2. Not rolling papers, Rachie. Mr. Toffee's been a member for 4 months, says the Sun newspaper, laughy face. Alan H has been a member for 22 months, says you want evidence of the submarine? Join the Navy. She couldn't pass a lot of the test. Tuckus Janice for 2,048 huffs. Proving relativity in 30 seconds. Go to an intersection, check the street names, then pull out your phone and verify the GPS points to the same location where you are. Yeah, literally have to use relativity in calculating the signal from GPS satellites. Mr. E-Man for $5 Australian says PhD Tony works for a university that hires the equipment out to people who put forward a serious proposal for the use of that equipment. Is that true, PhD Tony?
No, that particular instrument that I work on is dedicated entirely to passive observations. We do use it sometimes for calibration of other instruments. And they do pay us to calibrate their instruments against it. But yeah, mostly it's just a research instrument. It sits there and makes recordings, which are then sent back to Japan and analysed, decomposing atmospheric tides, solid earth tides, that sort of thing.
What's the control mass for the gravitometer that you were using?
The control mass for that gravimeter is a niobium sphere. It's supported on an electromagnetic field from a superconducting coil. And whenever there is a change in the force applied to the sphere, it induces a current in the superconductor that pushes it back. Sorry, just a second.
Popular man.
Okay, so sorry, got interrupted there. But whenever there's a change in the force being applied to the mass, or whenever the mass is accelerated, it moves. this induces a current in the coil that pushes it back to its original position. And so by measuring the current going through the coil, we can work out the accelerations that are being applied, the changes in accelerations that are being applied to this test mass through time.
Awesome. Technology. Love it. Thank you for that. Pentalica for $2. Buy one, Rachie. You'll call our videos parlor tricks. Bella charged $5 New Zealand, said, what happened to your video? I've been going back every day, giving it a watch. Now it's gone. I don't know which video you mean. Johnny Ragadoo for $5 says, let's all pitch in and give Rachie a submarine. It would be expensive, but if it would calm her down, it might be worth it. Teddy for $10, working commercial aviation training, and I'm not allowed to even talk about content and navigation databases between different customers so they don't steal each other's flight plans. B Paradoxing has been a member for 5 months, says, please change my vote on the poll to Flerf Queen, vote with the watches. Norman Dixon for $5, Rachie, you can hire a company that specialises in finding things underground in your property, like pipes and cables, without digging them up. Yeah. Don't know they use gravimetry, though. Holy Smalls for $5, Tony twice in one day, first Gutstuck Gibbon and now FTFE. Must be my birthday. DL1 for $2, think we can achieve 0 Kelvin in our lifetime. I mean, that's like 0 molecular movement. I just don't.
Yeah, you can't achieve 0 Kelvin. That would be, you instantly create a black hole, a singularity.
That's a bad thing. Let's not do that.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Get really close, though.
Dave Senek for $2 Canadian says, here's $2. Stupidity is not a right. Of course not. DL1 for $5. The problem is that if she saw a demonstration, she'd call it a parlor trick. Waikikamukow 855 for $2. Take the leap, Rachie. You can do it. I don't know. Alison for $2 says, which part of the experiment is the trick? It's all just a parlor trick. NWDM1-H for $50 Donkey Kong dollars. Hilarious show. By the way, have you seen Science Clicks video? Amazing descriptions and visualizations of Newton and Einstein's gravity plus much more. Yeah, that stuff goes over the Flerf head though, unfortunately. Alison for $10, Australian Rachie, if you ever come to Australia, contact me and I will teach you how to fly and navigate. You will learn quickly that navigation can only work on a globe. No one will take you up on that offer ever, just like they won't take MC2's sextant thing. Rick Sanchez for $5, talking to Rachie is like talking to my friend. Got to break it down to the toddler level before it might also make sense. Blue Marble Science for $2, shame on you, Rachie, I didn't cheat. I know, it's quite offensive to be told that you did when you built that from scratch. Diabetic War Slug for $5, Rachie basically just said she refuses to accept help and it's okay calling people liars and it's their fault for her being dishonest. Yeah, with the worst apology ever. Traveller X, been a member for 26 months, says, good morning, did I miss a Flerf conversion? Unfortunately not. Tim Pryor for $10, flat earthers should be banned from talking about science because not one field of science or any scientist ever agrees with them. Yeah, they don't talk about science, they talk about something else entirely. Draco Fire, oh funny, that guy, he's here.
Oh, who's that?
Member for 20 months says, counter is wrong, should be 19. Rachie, take a long look at yourself, ask why you lash out so badly. If needed, get help, I will teach you. Oh, you're a better man than me because I'm done trying to teach her. Alison for $5 Australian says, I didn't volunteer at the soup kitchen every weekend because I want something in return for the people I feed for free. Pronoun 1990 for $1.99 says, Rachie, you're not welcome in the mermaid community. Or the, sane people community. Rick Sanchez, been a member for 14 months, says, why does this say 1 month? It's been longer. It says 14, Rick. Saxon Zander, member for 11 months, says, Rachie is proof there are none so blind as those who refuse to see. JL for $10 says, no model, no argument, it's that simple. Flerfs have to account for all observable phenomena simultaneously as it occurs in reality, but that's already been done by the current model. I know, right? Quantum Rager still says Google Earth is the flat Earth model. It's insane. And a Mr. QTube, first name Fa for $5. There is 0 molecular movement in a Flerf's brain. Brilliant one to finish off with.
Right. Before we end off real quick, Rachie, you're still there, yep?
Yeah.
Right. I, as someone that you do not have a lot of history with, who doesn't really have anything against you in particular, am more than willing to have a civil conversation with you on a platform, I would say of your choice, but there's a couple of channels that I won't go on. But other than that, any platform that you wish, I will have a conversation with you without these guys here, without anyone, just us. Okay? But
I'd watch that.
I will only do that if you seek it out. You come to me, you ask for it, and I will try as best as I can to explain any question that you have to you. But you need to seek me out and ask me to do it, because that shows that you had the will to actually try and learn. So if you don't do that, it's not happening. But if you do want to do that, I'm in Craig's Discord. I think you are as well.
Yep.
Send me a message. Try and work it out sometime.
Well, thank you, Draco Fire, and thank you for coming on. PhD Tony, once again, thank you for everything you do, and all the help that you've given me understanding things, and the amazing amount of patience that you've shown with people that throw it back in your face.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure. Talk to you later.
If you guys aren't subscribed to PhD Tony, you should definitely do that. He's got some excellent science communication stuff on his channel. And Rachie, you know the two options. Accept the help you've been given, realize you're wrong, apologize to the people that you have indirectly or directly called a liar, or become Queen of the Flerfs. It's all down to you. Thank you for coming on. I do appreciate it. You probably want to go to bed because it's 2:30 in the morning. Anything you want to say?
Nah, I'm all good.
Well, thank you. We'll leave it there, guys. Please head over to MC Toon, who is interviewing someone who wrote an awesome book about flat earthers. Link in the chat just now. Go over there. Tell him FTFE sent you. Thank you, everyone, for coming on. Remember, stupidity is not a right. Fight the flat earth. Thanks, guys. I'll catch you all later.
See ya.
Good night, all.
Okay. Bye.
Good night, all. Thank you for watching. Please head over to MC Toon. Link in the chat. Love you all.